Ben Tennyson has lost everything. Now, in a new universe, he must decide, will he return to the role of hero, Ben X Supergirl? Hello there, Omni-sensei here with What If Ben 10 Was in Justice League, Ben 10 X DC Verse, Part 3. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Chapter 10, Ultimatum. Watchtower. A lot had changed for Ben in the month since his grandmother visited. For one thing, the founding members of the League had been giving him more authority on missions, often giving him command of a team. Another change was having Ship in his life. The little alien spent most of the time on the Watchtower, keeping systems at peak efficiency. He would sometimes stay at Ben's house, but he got bored quickly since he couldn't go outside. The final thing that had changed was the matter of his secret identity. Most Leaguers now knew that the shape-shifting alien was, in fact, a human named Ben. They didn't know his last name, for security reasons, but they felt honored that Ben trusted them enough to show them what he really looked like. Right now, though, the Watchtower was being emptied of many of its heroes. A distress call had been received from deep space, and most of the League was being deployed to assist. Ben was saying goodbye to Supergirl before she left. "Don't worry," Supergirl said as she gave Ben a quick kiss, "I'll be back before you know it." "Did I say that I was worried?" asked Ben playfully. "It's Ship who gets worried, he likes you." Ship, agreed the symbiote as he rubbed his head against Supergirl's leg. "Ah, don't worry, Ship," said Supergirl. She thought that Ship was the cutest thing in the world. "I'll be back soon, I promise." Ship. "See you soon, Kara." Ben gave her one last kiss before he and Ship left the Javelin Bay. They watched the small fleet of vessels take off into space. They stood there for a moment, Ship sitting on Ben's shoulder, before Wonder Woman raced past them. "Come on, Ben," she shouted. "We have a situation." Ben looked at Ship. "Of course we do." Then he took off after her, saying to Ship, "Come on, buddy, let's show them what you can do." Ship. Atlantic Ocean, an oil rig was under attack, literally from under. Strange, humanoid lava monsters were crawling up from the cracks in the seabed and were attacking the rig and its crew. Aquaman, King of Atlantis and part-time member of the Justice League, swam underneath, giving his report to the other heroes. "The new Bermuda platform is under attack. If it collapses, we're gonna have the worst oil spill in history on our hands." He sighed. "I've told those idiots to stay out of my ocean." Superman, flying overhead, decided not to comment about that last part. "ETA is 3 minutes, Aquaman." "We're right behind you, Superman," said Ben, sitting next to Wonder Woman inside of a transformed ship. True to his name, Ship could transform into an alien flying weapon. He was boxy in shape, with flat wings that held a multitude of weapons. The expressions on the League when they'd first seen Ship transform had been priceless, but this was the first time any of them had seen Ship actually fly. "See you there, Ben," said Batman over the communicator, as he flew the Batwing to the platform. On the platform, Aquaman was fighting the lava monsters, kicking away any that didn't see him coming, and slicing any others with the wicked hook that replaced his left hand. One monster almost hit him, but a batarang struck it in the back. Aquaman turned to see Batman jump out of the Batwing and onto a monster. The two heroes fought until they were back to back. "These geniuses dug right into the Earth's magma," said Aquaman. It never occurred to them that there might be anything living down there. Both heroes covered their eyes as Ship arrived and cut down a number of monsters with his weapons. "Ship," he said in a deep voice. His hatch opened up as Wonder Woman and Ben, now transformed into Chromastone, flew out to join them alongside Superman. The five went into a defensive circle as the monsters approached. Before they fought, however, a massive gust of wind threw the creatures into the air. "Not to worry, fellow heroes." The Leaguers turned to see who'd helped them. A young Asian man, the one who'd created the tornado, spoke up again. "The Ultimen are here," he and the 4 other heroes with him struck poses. "Not them again," muttered Aquaman. Ben knew about the Ultimen. They'd been all over the news and were apparently government-sponsored, unlike the League, who relied on donations and private funding, courtesy of Bruce Wayne. The young Asian man, Wind Dragon, was the leader and could create massive gusts of wind. The African American next to him was Juice and could both generate and turn into electricity. The Native American behind them was Long Shadow, who could grow to massive sizes, although Ben had seen that way big was bigger. The last 2 members of the Ultimen were Downpour and Shifter. They were twins, both having paper-white skin, red eyes, and pointed ears. Downpour could transform his body into water of any kind of volume, while Shifter could turn into any animal, real or imaginary. They didn't seem that bad to Ben, although they did come off as a little annoying, what with their constant support of everything popular. Being a hero wasn't about doing what was popular, it was about doing what was right. Superman punched aside several creatures, seemingly uninterested in the fight. That changed when one of the monsters vomited up magma, covering the Man of Steel. Soon, that vomit was joined by more, as other monsters did the same to him. Soon, he was trapped as the magma hardened. Now, is that nice? The monsters turned to see Wind Dragon and Juice behind them. Juice placed his hand against a wall and transformed into living electricity. He traveled down to the metal floor and electrocuted the monsters closest to Superman. Wind Dragon walked up to Juice after he turned back into his human form. "You know, Juice, Superman was my hero when I was a lad. It's not his fault he's getting old." Wind Dragon didn't seem to care that his childhood hero was 5 feet away as he said that. A vein throbbed on Superman's forehead. "Old." He flexed his arms and the magma shattered like glass. "Old but spry, sir," apologized Wind Dragon, "old but spry." Wonder Woman flew forward, slamming into a small group of monsters and knocking them off the platform. Behind her, Long Shadow was wrestling with 2 more. It's a real honor to be working with you, Wonder Woman." Long Shadow had something of a boyhood crush on the Amazon princess. The princess in question smiled, even as she punched another monster into oblivion. Likewise, Long Shadow. Downpour and Shifter leaned against a railing, seemingly amused by the fighting. "Shall we lend them a hand, sister?" asked Downpour. "Of course, brother," replied Shifter. "Would you help Wonder Woman and our colleague while I help Chromastone?" "What is it with you and shapeshifters?" asked the male twin. Before his embarrassed sister could answer, he jumped off the railing and yelled, "River!" His body became a snake-like tendril of water, knocking over a dozen monsters. Shifter ran towards Chromastone, who was blasting several monsters with rainbow-colored energy. Unlike Long Shadow, Shifter didn't have a crush on Chromastone. After all, she had no idea what he looked like or what his personality really was. She just found it interesting to meet other people with shape-shifting powers. The fact that this one shouted the name of his transformations, just like her, was a bonus. "Hi there," Shifter said cheerfully as she moved back-to-back with Chromastone. "Hey," said Chromastone casually as he blasted another monster, "how's your day been?" "Oh, you know," she replied, "saving lives, fighting monsters." "You?" "Same here." Chromastone looked around, seeing how they were outnumbered, and slapped the Ultimatrix dial. Shifter covered her eyes from the green light and looked down at the new form. It was only about 2 feet tall, pale white, with green eyes and a green mouth. "Echo, echo," the creature yelled in a mechanical voice. "What can you do with that?" asked Shifter. This new form didn't look that impressive. "I can do this," said Echo, echo. He replicated himself until there were 20 of him. All of the Echo Echoes took a deep breath and then released a sonic wave that shattered many of the monsters into pieces. "Nice work," complimented Shifter, who then saw a creature heading towards one Echo Echo. "Triceratops," she yelled as her body turned into the dinosaur. She barreled into the monster, smashing it. "Thanks for The save, said Echo Echo. Seeing no other creatures in their area, the Echo Echoes merged into one, while Shifter turned back into her normal form. No problem. Hey, do you think you could tell me how you do your shape-shifting? It looks really cool. Echo Echo scratched his head. Maybe we can talk about this after we win. Oh right, sorry, of course. Shifter was embarrassed. Here she was, trying to have a chat in the middle of a mission. It was a rookie thing to do. Then she saw her brother transform into a tidal wave. Look out. Don't worry, Shifter, said Echo Echo, I've got this. He slapped the Ultimatrix dial again. Big chill, the blue Mothman flew into the air. Eagle, shouted Shifter, and they both flew up above Downpour. As they watched dozens of creatures get washed away, Big Chill said, maybe you should talk to your brother about where he turns into a tidal wave. He was only trying to help, defended Shifter. And I appreciate that, replied Big Chill, really, I do. But if he's gonna do that, just make sure there isn't anyone around that he doesn't want to drown. Big Chill then tapped his chin in thought. I wonder what happens when he goes swimming. Shifter grinned, or tried to. She was an eagle, and they don't have lips. I've seen it, it isn't pretty. Batman and Aquaman climbed to the top of the platform, still pursued by the magma monsters. Can you make telepathic contact? Asked Batman. Do they look like fish to you? Demanded Aquaman. Don't despair, old chums. The two turned to see Wind Dragon flying next to them, borne aloft by a tornado underneath his feet. Gathering his power, Wind Dragon unleashed a massive gust of wind. To keep them from being blown away, Big Chill turned into Humongosaur and used himself as a shield between himself and Shifter, while Long Shadow increased in size, catching Wonder Woman in his hand. Then, to everyone's surprise, the monsters didn't get blown away. Instead, they were frozen solid. When the wind subsided, the other Ultimen then gathered around their leader. I didn't know you could do that, said Long Shadow. Neither did I, replied Wind Dragon. After the monsters were removed, a news crew arrived, and the Ultimen took center stage. The League members didn't exactly mind, since none of them really liked the attention, but they were annoyed by Wind Dragon's pompous speech about preserving the planet. Not that they disagreed with the subject matter. It was just that Wind Dragon sounded like a commercial, albeit a passionate one. He's certainly earnest, said Aquaman. I think the word is corny, muttered Superman. Wonder Woman walked over to the Ultiman. Our paths keep crossing and our goals are very much the same. Isn't it time that you accepted our offer? She was referring to the times that the League had offered membership to the Ultiman, but they'd been refused each time. All right. Long Shadow was the only one who seemed to want to join, but Wind Dragon held up a hand to stop him. We're truly flattered, Wonder Woman, but we're simply not ready. I don't know, said Humongosaur, you seem pretty ready to me. He saw both Long Shadow and Shifter smile a bit at that, but they made no other move to join them. Wind Dragon smiled up at him as well but said, I appreciate the compliment, but why don't we ask you when we feel we've earned it? After all, we must earn things for ourselves first. Humongosaur shrugged, then turned into Diamondhead. He wasn't going to push it if they didn't want to join. Long Shadow tried to speak to Wonder Woman but kept stuttering until he was pulled away by Juice. As Wonder Woman and Diamondhead walked into ship, the alien noticed Shifter waving at him. He waved back, then ship took off. Watchtower. I thought I was done getting trash-talked on national television, Ben thought bitterly, as he and the other Leaguers from the platform mission watched the Ultiman sponsor and CEO, Maxwell Lord, insult the League, calling them aloof and loose cannons. I can't listen to any more of this. Superman said as he turned off the TV, that guy's dripping more oil than that platform ever did. Yeah, I got enough bad press in my own universe, thank you very much, said Ben as he rested his chin on his palm. Ship. Commiserated Ship, who was sitting on the chair next to Ben. He has the gall to take cheap shots at us, grumbled Aquaman. I know Maxwell Lord, said Batman, and all he cares about is money. Well, it takes money to do what we do, argued Wonder Woman. After all, not all of us are independently wealthy. Batman wasn't convinced. Lord's a walking ego who will do anything for a buck and some free publicity. If he's involved in this, it isn't about helping people. Well, I don't know about Lord, said Ben, but the Ultimans seem all right, if a little annoying. He glanced up to see Batman, Superman, Aquaman and even Ship giving him weird looks. What? They kind of remind me of myself when people found out my secret identity, a little full of themselves, but their hearts are in the right place. They do seem to be a nice bunch of kids, added Wonder Woman, trying to put a little optimism into the conversation. Ultiman HQ. The Ultimans sat around, surrounded by money and samples of their merchandise. Juice was watching TV, Wind Dragon was talking on his cell phone to his girlfriend of the week, the twins were playing poker, and Long Shadow was leaning against a wall, brooding. So last night, said Downpour, Inside Celebrity did a whole segment on Wind Dragon, and Mr. Swelled Head here doesn't even mention the rest of us. Shifter looked at her cards and smiled, showing 4 aces, and winning the enormous pile of cash that was the pot. When do I get to be team leader? Demanded Downpour. When your teeth sparkle like mine, said Wind Dragon, as he hung up his phone. What I want to know, complained Shifter, is why I can't get a conversation with that alien guy. Oh, is having a conversation all you want to do? Teased Juice. Yes, cried a blushing Shifter, I never get to talk to other shapeshifters. I want to know how he does it. We all know how he does it, sis, said Downpour, he hits that button on his chest and bam. He's a different alien. But I want to know how that works. Kids. The Ultiman turned to see Maxwell Lord enter the room. Why would you want to be associated with those has-beens? Your faces are on the walls of every 12-year-old in America. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, said Downpour, but I'm sick of being a teen idol. There's more to me than just a pretty face. He glared at his now snickering sister. Did I forget to give you the royalty check for the new water-spouting Downpour action figure? Lord handed the hero a piece of paper. Downpour's eyes widened at all the zeros. And that's just domestic. Long Shadow finally stopped brooding and said, what I want to know is, why can't we join the Justice League? Finished Wind Dragon, Downpour and Juice. Long Shadow had been asking that question for weeks now. Hey, it's all right, said Wind Dragon. I used to think like that. Used to, echoed Long Shadow. What changed? I don't know, said Wind Dragon, shrugging. Guess I just started wanting stuff. The Ultiman heard a ringing, which was coming from Lord's cell phone. He picked it up, glanced at the caller ID, and immediately marched out the door. The Ultiman looked at each other for a moment, then shrugged. Lord had calls like that on occasion. In the next room, Lord was arguing on the phone. Yes, but just because Wind Dragon has a new power yes, I know, but. He sighed, I'll check it out, ma'am, I'll have them all checked out. Supervillain Supermax Prison. There was no rest in the life of a superhero, as Wonder Woman and Heat Blast knew as they worked to stop a prison breakout. Giganta, a size-changing woman, was attempting to free her boyfriend, Gorilla Grodd. Heat Blast sent a wave of fire into her face, distracting the giantess long enough for Wonder Woman to send her flying into an evacuated part of the prison. Come on, Giganta, said Wonder Woman, how long are you going to be Grodd's errand girl? As long as he needs me, replied Giganta. I took you apart before, warned Wonder Woman. Why go through it again? She's a glutton for punishment, offered Heat Blast. Nope, said a suddenly smiling Giganta, this time, I've got help. Both heroes looked to the side as a red and blue blur slammed into them. Bizarro here to save the day, sang Bizarro. Heat Blast turned into Echo Echo, made several dozen copies of himself and unleashed a massive wave of sound. Bizarro shook it off and approached the fallen Amazon, preparing to finish her off. Don't. Ignore. Me, said Echo Echo, as the copies merged into one. Time. 2. Go. Ultimate. He twisted the Ultimatrix dial and slapped it. The 4 spikes popped out, and Echo Echo changed. His body was about Ben's height now, was a dark blue and more robotic in appearance. Strange discs were attached to various points on his body, and he had no feet. Instead, he hovered a few inches over the ground. Ultimate Echo Echo, he shouted. His voice was more robotic as well. He detached a disc from his shoulder and threw it at Bizarro. It hovered there for a moment, then released a sonic attack so powerful that it drove the twisted clone to his knees. I guess you heard me that time, asked Ultimate Echo Echo smugly. That's a new one, commented Wonder Woman, who'd come to. Can you take Giganta? I've got this. Ultimate Echo Echo nodded as his disc returned to his shoulder. He flew over to the size changer in question and bombarded her with sonic waves. She yelled in pain and flailed around, eventually knocking him away. Ultimate Echo Echo corrected himself and sped back towards his opponent, who was headed for the area where Grodd was being kept. However, Giganta stopped when she spotted Long Shadow standing in front of her. Out of the way, Tiny, sneered Giganta. Instead of replying, Long Shadow focused his powers and grew in size. In a moment, he was towering over even Giganta. You were saying, he said. Oh, poop, said Giganta, just as Long Shadow punched her in the face. Ultimate Echo Echo flew over to Long Shadow's head. Nice work, dude, he complimented. Mind if I finish this up? Long Shadow smiled. Be my guest. Ultimate Echo Echo deployed all of his discs, which flew around Giganta's head and began replicating. Soon, her head was surrounded by the discs. What is this? Demanded the dazed giantess. This is Sonic. Ultimate Echo Echo seemed to take a deep breath. Doom. With that last word, the discs unleashed a truly impressive sonic attack that, had Giganta not been so resilient, would have shattered a mountain. As it was, the size changer was knocked out. That was pretty cool, said Long Shadow. Thanks, replied Ultimate Echo Echo as his discs returned to their normal number and reattached to him. He looked down at Wonder Woman's fight. Come on, we should help out. Does Wonder Woman need it? Asked Long Shadow, even as he followed the alien. Probably not, admitted Ultimate Echo Echo, but would you really pass up an opportunity to smack down a bad guy? Point taken. Bizarro reeled back as Wonder Woman punched him in the face. He shook his head to clear it as the Amazon princess approached him. Can't you see that Giganta is just using you? She asked. Angered, Bizarro slammed her into the side of one of the buildings. She fell to the ground, trying to shake off her dazed state as Bizarro approached her. Me do anything for the woman I love, he declared as he raised his fists, even break her boyfriend out of jail. And what's going to happen to you then? Wonder Woman asked. Bizarro lowered his fists, thinking about it. Sadly for him, he was distracted long enough for Wonder Woman to recover and deliver an uppercut that sent Bizarro flying. Ultimate Echo Echo blasted him with a twin sonic wave, and then Long Shadow smashed him into the ground, knocking him out. The size-changing hero walked over to the others. Good job, complimented Wonder Woman as she placed a hand on both of their shoulders. Long Shadow smiled. Ultimate Echo Echo would have, but his mouth didn't move, so he settled for nodding. Later, after helping the prison guards restore order, and after Ultimate Echo Echo became Chromastone, the three heroes stood on a hill overlooking the prison. Long Shadow was explaining his origins to them. Believe it or not, when I was born I was small and sickly. Luckily, my parents were scientists. They were experimenting with growth hormones. I guess the experiments were a success. He gave a small laugh. I'm just glad they didn't try it out on a monkey first, commented Chromastone, or we'd have King Kong running around. The other two heroes smiled at the joke, then Wonder Woman turned to Long Shadow. Where are your parents now? Long Shadow looked down, his expression turning sad. Mom passed away. Dad's retired. Changing the subject, he asked, do you two really believe that I could make it in the league? Dude, you kicked the butts of two heavy-hitting supervillains, said Chromastone. I think you're more than ready. So do I, said Wonder Woman. Long Shadow looked down, uncertain. But I guess I owe it to the Ultiman too. Before he could finish his sentence, his cell phone rang, and he picked it up. Yeah? Listen to whoever was on the other line for a moment. Okay, right away. He turned to the others. I've got to go. Both Leaguers nodded. Long Shadow went back towards the Ultiman HQ, while Wonder Woman and Chromastone were teleported back to the Watchtower. Unknown location. After Long Shadow arrived at the HQ, he and the other Ultiman were taken to a building nearby and immediately placed in a medical ward. They weren't told what the place was or why they were really there, only that it was important for them to be there. The five had been lying in medical beds for several hours and were getting very bored. How long are they gonna keep us here? Asked Shifter. What's the hurry, sis? Asked Downpour. Gotta get home to wax your mustache? Juice laughed, while Shifter fumed. Well, I, for one, have a date, said Wind Dragon. That didn't surprise the other Ultiman. Wind Dragon hadn't been single for longer than 3 days. Young women practically worshipped him. Unbeknownst to them, the Ultiman were being observed by Maxwell Lord and Professor Hamilton. It's worse than we thought, said Hamilton as he led Lord to a computer. It showed scans of the Ultiman's bodies, though Lord had no idea what it all meant. The Ultiman's genetic code is breaking down. Wind Dragon in particular is showing rapid signs of degradation, but they're all in the early stages of failure. How long? Asked Lord sadly. A few months, or a few days, answered a somber Hamilton, and the process will be painful. We should do everything we can to help them. That's not our priority. The two men turned to see a woman walk through the door. She was a stout, African-American woman with a grim demeanor. She didn't look like much, but she was one of the most dangerous people on the planet. But Mrs. Waller, argued Lord, I really think that we. Since when did your opinion count, Lord? Waller interrupted, then she turned to Hamilton. How fast can you get the second team up and running? Back with the Ultiman, Long Shadow started to focus. One ability that he'd never told anyone about was that he had superhuman senses. It wasn't on the same level as Superman, but he could hear through solid objects without difficulty. He started to hear voices, and the voices were saying things that he didn't like. A door opened, and Maxwell Lord stepped into the room. Great news, troops, he said bombastically. Dragon's new power is nothing to be concerned about, but just to be safe, Professor Hamilton wants to keep you overnight for observation. The Ultiman groaned and began to protest, but Long Shadow held up a hand to quiet them. No problem, Max, we'll be happy to stay. The other Ultiman were surprised, but after a look from their teammate, they didn't argue. A few hours later, the Ultiman were in an assigned room, watching a movie. They weren't really paying attention to the film, rather, they were waiting for Long Shadow to give the signal. Finally, he nodded at Juice, who sent a small amount of electricity across the floor, up the wall, and finally into a security camera, which exploded. Now free from observation, Shifter turned into a gorilla and broke down the door. As the Ultiman raced down the hallway, two guards tried to stop them but were blown away by Wind Dragon, and the Ultiman continued on their way. What exactly are we looking for? Asked Shifter as they ran. We'll know it when we find it, replied Long Shadow. Eventually, after searching several rooms, they entered what looked like a lab, filled with cages. Shifter approached one and almost had her head bitten off by a giant mutant dog. Ah, shouted Shifter. What is that? Over there. Wind Dragon pointed to the back of the room. Floating in 5 liquid-filled tubes were the Ultimen. Obviously, they were clones. The Ultimen outside the tubes were beyond shocked. They were devastated to discover that they'd been violated like that. Shifter wept into her brother's chest, while Downpour held her tight. A few hours later, Hamilton and Lord were examining the clones for signs of tampering, while guards ran around, searching for the Ultimen. "The clones are unharmed," announced Hamilton, as Mrs. Waller entered the room. "Security can't find a trace of our Ultimen," she said as she walked up to Lord, "but I want you to find them, Mr. Lord, and bring them back." Lord shook his head. "They're not going to trust me, or anyone else, not after." "Bring them back," snapped Waller, "or I'm calling in the squad to put them down." She turned her attention to Hamilton. "I want this laboratory dismantled and relocated, no loose ends." She then stormed out of the room. Maxwell Lord walked to his car, thoroughly disgusted with himself. He hated what his greed had gotten him into. Now, he was going to have to bring in people that he was genuinely fond of to be executed. He didn't notice the breeze flowing past him until it turned into a powerful gust of wind, knocking his papers out of his hand and then casting him into the sky. The wind brought him to the top of a building, where he was surrounded by the Ultimen. None of them looked happy. "You lied to us, Max," said Wind Dragon. "I was only trying to protect you from people who don't have your best interests at heart, and I won't rest until I—" It was a lie. Lord had spent so many years lying that he did it out of reflex now. "Spare us the performance," shouted Wind Dragon. He nodded at the twins. "Water," shouted Downpour. "Lion," yelled Shifter. Downpour wrapped Lord in a bubble of water. While Lord was trying to hold his breath, Shifter circled him like he was prey. "What's it going to be, Max?" she asked. "Drowning on a rooftop, or eaten by a lion?" Lord made a surrender gesture, and Downpour released him. After taking in a lungful of air, he started to talk. "You're artificial life forms grown in a test tube. You were designed to be the ultimate superheroes." "That's a lie," shouted Long Shadow. "I remember my parents and how much they loved me. I was with my mother when she died. I implanted memories," interrupted Wind Dragon softly. Lord nodded in confirmation. "But I spent Thanksgiving with my father last week," said Long Shadow. "Actors?" asked Wind Dragon. Lord nodded again. "How long have we?" Lord sighed. "You're just a little over a year old." The Ultiman recoiled in shock as he continued. "One of the purposes of the Cadmus project was to create a popular group of superheroes who were completely loyal to the government, unlike those loose cannons in the Justice League." "And the clones?" demanded Downpour. "Replacements for when you wear out," admitted Lord. "Once they're complete, the clones will think they're you. They'll be you, and no one will be the wiser." "How could you do this to us?" asked an outraged Juice. Lord laughed bitterly. "Me? This is so big, even my superiors are small fish." He paled when the Ultiman moved closer. "But I was just following orders," finished Wind Dragon. Juice surrounded Lord in a cage of electricity and was about to kill him when Long Shadow stopped him. "No," he said, "he's nothing, we want the big fish." Wind Dragon spread his arms, and a massive tornado lifted them away, leaving Lord to struggle with his guilt. The Ultiman arrived at the lab with the clones, smashing their way through walls and anything else that got in their way. However, the lab was empty, and the clones were gone, not even dust remained. "They're gone," cursed Wind Dragon. "And we're dead," added Downpour. "They're here somewhere, they've got to be. Take this place apart." No one seemed to question Dragon's faulty logic. Instead, they resumed smashing through walls. That is, save for Long Shadow. "Wait," he shouted. "There are other offices in this building, innocent people could get hurt." But no one heard him, they were already gone. On the upper stories of the building, employees were hard at work when 4 angry metahumans stormed through, smashing anything in their way. The citizens had nowhere to go until a giant fist smashed through the wall and opened into a rescuing hand. "I'm here to help," announced a now giant Long Shadow. The people quickly got into his hand. Not everyone could fit, so Long Shadow put some of them on his shoulder or in his long hair. As he began climbing down the building, they clung to him for dear life, but some of them began to slip off. "Need a hand?" Long Shadow turned his head towards the speaker, who turned out to be Wonder Woman, followed by Superman and Ship, who had 4 arms, Batman and Aquaman inside of him. After helping anyone in immediate danger, the heroes told Ship to help anyone else who needed it, while the Leaguers and Long Shadow rushed into the building. Inside, the Ultimen were close to despair. They hadn't found the clones, and they were running out of time. Shifter sat down against a wall. "What's the point of this?" she asked the others. "We'll never find Cadmus or a cure, it's hopeless." "Then what?" demanded Wind Dragon. "We just die and let them replace us. No one knows that we were here, that we mattered." At this point, Dragon was practically screaming. Tears fell down Shifter's face. "I say we bring the whole place down," said Downpour, "right on top of us." Juice nodded in agreement. "Don't give up hope yet, Downpour." The Ultimen turned to see Long Shadow and the League. "We've got friends in high places." Shifter shook her head derisively. "You idiot, do you really think that they can help us?" Wonder Woman stepped forward. "Whatever's going on, we'll do everything in our power to." "Yes, power, that's what it always comes down to, doesn't it?" interrupted Wind Dragon as he walked up to her. "That's the only way we'll be remembered." Wonder Woman braced herself as Wind Dragon released his power. He turned to the other Ultimen. "If we're the ones who take down the Justice League, the world will never forget us." The other Ultimen smiled and took fighting stances. "Listen to yourself, you're not making sense," said Batman. "You're getting worse by the minute." Wind Dragon smiled. Translation: they're afraid to face us. "No. Stop this." Long Shadow interposed himself between his team and the League. Wind Dragon shook his head. "As a man said, you're either with us or against us." Long Shadow looked back at the League for a moment, but before he could act, Ju struck him with a bolt of lightning. With a shout of pain, the size changer slumped to the ground, out cold. Downpour turned into a wave of water and tackled Aquaman, while Juice went after Batman. Wind Dragon collided with Superman, sending them both crashing through several offices. Shifter, now a rhino, slammed into Four Arms, knocking him into an empty room. Juice had pursued Batman into the boiler room but couldn't find the Dark Knight in the dimly lit area. Every time he thought he had a shot, Batman would dodge the attack. He chased after Batman's shadow until he was near some pipes. Where did he go? Juice wondered aloud. He got his answer as Batman jumped from above, knocking Juice to the ground, then throwing him against the pipes with enough force to break them. The water covered his body and then shorted him out. He was instantly, and painfully, knocked out. Batman narrowed his eyes at the unconscious metahuman. Lights out, old chum. Groggily, Four Arms stood up, rubbing his sore head. Shifter approached him, transforming back into her humanoid form. Now we'll see who's the better shapeshifter. I don't want to do this, Shifter, said Four Arms. I don't want to hurt you. Shifter laughed. What makes you think you can? I can't believe that I actually looked up to you, you pathetic freak. All four of Four Arms' eyes narrowed. Okay, you know what? You're sick, so I'm only going to leave you with a minor concussion. He slapped the Ultimatrix dial. Shifter covered her eyes from the green light. In Four Arms' place was a large, orange crab with a very large head. He had 6 small legs and 2 thin pincers for hands. Brainstorm, yelled the alien in a British accent, who looked down at the Ultimatrix dial on his abdomen. Confounded Ultimatrix. I desired to be transformed into wrath. Oh, very well, I suppose that I shall have to make do. Shifter laughed again as she turned into a tiger. What, you think you can beat me because your head is bigger? Brainstorm shook his oversized cranium. No, my dear Shifter, I believe that I will defeat you because my brain is bigger. With that, the plates on the top of his head opened, exposing his brain. Bolts of electricity sprang forth and hit his adversary. Shifter screamed and fell to the floor, seemingly attempting to turn into several different forms at once before turning back into her humanoid form. She struggled to her feet. Intriguing, said Brainstorm. It would appear that with enough electrical impulses sent into your nervous system, it overloads your ability to alter forms. Brainstorm looked smug. This altercation is over, my dear. I won't quit. Shifter panted heavily. I won't be forgotten. She turned into a T-Rex and charged at Brainstorm, who sighed and hit her with a massive bolt of electricity. She fell to the ground, unconscious. Let the record show that I attempted a peaceful resolution to this confrontation. He said to no one in particular. He transformed into Humongosaur, picked up Shifter, and went to find the others. He found Aquaman in the next room, getting knocked over by a blast of water from downpour. You want a hand? Humongosaur asked as he gently placed Shifter on the ground. Aquaman shook his head. Just getting a feel for the kid's power, nothing I can't handle. Downpour saw the fallen form of his sister, then glared daggers at Humongosaur. No one does that to my sister. Do you hear me? Nobody. He sent forth a huge stream of high-pressure water at the alien, but Aquaman jumped in front of the shot. Downpour smirked, thinking he'd gotten at least one of them, but saw that Aquaman was unharmed. King of the Seas, remember, said Aquaman with a raised brow. Yelling, Downpour tried to punch Aquaman. It didn't even make him flinch. The King of Atlantis knocked Downpour out with a single blow, then slung him over his shoulder. Come on, he said to Humongosaur, let's find the others. The two met up with Batman, who was dragging Juice, and Wonder Woman, who'd stayed behind to look after Long Shadow, who was now up and about. They found Wind Dragon fighting Superman, the latter of whom was simply standing there. Wind Dragon's power wasn't even fazing him. You don't have to do this, said Superman, trying to reason with the youth. It's all I know, shouted Wind Dragon desperately. It's what I was created for. You're confused, Dragon, the genetic degeneration. No more words, screamed Wind Dragon. No more. He finally summoned up enough power to knock Superman onto his back, but before he could do any more, Long Shadow jumped in front of him. Look at what you're doing. Look. Wind Dragon looked around, seeing all of the devastation he'd caused. Is this what you want to be remembered for? Asked Long Shadow. He was your hero. Tears leaked from Dragon's eyes as he fell to his knees. He was my hero, he sobbed, and a hero is all I ever wanted to be. The defeated Ultimen were being watched by the League until the authorities could come pick them up. Until then, the Leaguers were trying to see if there was some way to help them. Maybe Dr. Fate or the Atom could find a cure. Offered Superman. Then Humongosaur had an idea. He wasn't completely sure that it would work, but... Guys, I'm gonna try something. The others watched as he stomped over to the Ultimen. Hey, Long Shadow, could you come here for a sec? Long Shadow didn't know what the alien had planned, but he did as he was asked, while the other Ultimen looked at him warily. Ultimatrix, Humongosaur said, scan closest sentient life forms. Scanning. Said a mechanical version of Ben's voice. A green light from the Ultimatrix dial swept over the Ultimen. Life forms suffering from genetic degradation, do you wish to restore? The eyes of everyone present widened. Was the Ultimatrix capable of curing them? Ultimatrix, begin restoration. Another green light passed over them. When it faded, the voice came again. Life forms restored, genetic degradation removed. Humongosaur swayed until Superman and Wonder Woman moved to support him. Are you okay? asked Wonder Woman. Yeah, I'm fine, doing that takes a lot out of me, but I'll be all right in a minute. He turned to the Ultimen, who were starting to stand up. How about you guys? Not feeling like homicidal maniacs anymore? Wind Dragon nodded. I feel like a fog is lifting from my mind. I think you did it. The Ultimen had tears in their eyes, they weren't going to die. Shifter walked up to him and gave him a hug, or, she tried to, since she was hugging a 20-foot dinosaur. Thank you so much, she said. I might be going to prison, but at least I'll live to see the trial. You're welcome. This might have been the first time that Humongosaur had met someone that was actually looking forward to jail time. Later, as 4 of the Ultimen were being led away by the police, Superman and Wonder Woman were being told everything that Long Shadow knew. Project Cadmus? Asked Superman. That's all you know? Everything else is an implanted memory, said Long Shadow sadly. At least now, you have plenty of time to get some real ones, said Wonder Woman. Long Shadow smiled at her, hope in his eyes. Guys, said Humongosaur, pointing. We've got company. Several army trucks rolled up, with dozens of soldiers carrying large guns hopping out. Everyone, the League, the press, the police, and the Ultimen looked at them in confusion. We'll take it from here, said Mrs. Waller as she got out of a truck, followed closely by Maxwell Lord. The Ultimen belong to us. Belong? Repeated Wonder Woman furiously. A poor choice of words, said Lord, we'll see to it that their last days are comfortable. He turned to the Ultimen. We will take care of you. You have my word, for whatever it's worth. The 4 Ultimen looked at each other, they were going to live, but they had nowhere else to go, and if they started a fight, innocent people might get hurt. All right, Max, said Wind Dragon. The soldiers guided them into a truck, while Waller smirked. Several more soldiers moved to take Long Shadow, but Wonder Woman moved between them. No, was all she said. You need to step back, said Waller as she walked forward. Batman moved in front of her. Not going to happen, he said darkly, Long Shadow's with us. Waller didn't even blink. Safety's off. A dozen soldiers leveled their weapons at Wonder Woman and Long Shadow. In response, Superman, Aquaman and Humongosaur stepped forward, blocking the shots. Humongosaur snarled, while Batman leaned in close to Waller's face. Mine are bigger than yours. The barest smile was on Batman's face. The two locked eyes for a moment. Stand down, ordered Waller. The soldiers obeyed as Waller took a step back, an evil smile on her face. He's free to go with you for however long he's got. That should be about 80 years, lady, thought a smug Humongosaur. Who are you people? Demanded Batman. That's a national security matter, and if I were you, I wouldn't probe the situation too closely. She leaned in close and whispered, rich boy. Batman's eyes went wide, she knew. Waller got back into her car, and they drove off. This isn't over, is it? Asked Humongosaur. I have a feeling that it's only beginning, answered Superman. Watchtower Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman and Humongosaur, who had Ship sitting on his shoulder, were teleported onto the Watchtower, followed by Long Shadow. The young man looked around at the impressive installation. The 5 heroes turned to their newest member. Welcome to the Justice League, said Wonder Woman. Humongosaur smiled at Long Shadow, he was like a kid at Christmas. He watched Wonder Woman and Superman take the new guy on a tour, while Batman went over to the monitors. The deep space mission is over, they'll be here in a few minutes. Humongosaur nodded and slapped the Ultimatrix dial, turning back into Ben. Okay, Bats, see you tomorrow. He headed to the Javelin Bay, while Ship left to go to sleep in Ben's quarters. Ben arrived just in time to see Supergirl walk down the ramp of a javelin. Her face brightened up when she saw him, and she rushed forward to wrap him in a hug. Kara, he wheezed, air. Sorry. San Francisco. Ben had returned home after telling Kara what had happened with the Ultiman. She had been shocked and told her boyfriend to go home and get some rest. However, Ben found sleep elusive. He kept thinking about the Ultiman. They didn't deserve whatever Cadmus was going to do to them, but he had no way to help them. Then Ben got an idea. He rushed to his bedroom, where he kept a violet crystal hidden in a drawer. He picked it up and whispered into it. "Hey, Grandma. I need a favor." After an hour explaining what had happened, he put the crystal away and tried to get to sleep, but his phone rang and he answered it. "Hello? Hey Ben, how are you?" "Kara? Why was she calling at this time of night?" "I'm fine, what's up?" "Can't a girl call her boyfriend just to say hi?" said Kara jokingly. "But seriously, you seemed kind of down after what happened with the Ultiman." Ben sighed. "I don't like fighting other heroes, Kara. And despite being created in a lab, the Ultiman were heroes. They didn't deserve to be hauled off like that, having who knows what done to them. I just feel like I should have done more." "Ben, it's okay," said Kara soothingly, "you did everything you could, and that's all anyone asks of us. Besides, you cured them, right? That means that they have a fighting chance." Ben smiled, even though his girlfriend couldn't see it. "Yeah, I guess. Thanks, Kara, I needed that." Then he yawned. Kara giggled. "Needed something to help you get to sleep, huh? Well, good night, Ben." "Good night, Kara, see you tomorrow." As Ben hung up, he finally drifted off to sleep. Unknown location. The Ultiman had been sitting together in a Cadmus cell for hours, convinced that while they weren't going to die of genetic degradation, they were going to die in other painful ways. "What do you think they'll do to us?" asked a worried Shifter. "I don't know," said Downpour, "but I'm betting that we won't like it." "I agree," said Wind Dragon. Juice only nodded in agreement. "Well, I'm glad that you all agree that staying here is a bad idea." The Ultiman turned to see a purple being with violet hair floating in front of the cell. "If you don't want to be sliced open like frogs in a high school class, maybe you should come with me." "Who are you?" asked Wind Dragon. "My name is Verdona, dear, and I'll be getting you somewhere safe now." Verdona snapped her fingers, and suddenly the five of them were standing outside of a city. "There we go. No one will find you in another universe." The Ultiman stared. Going to another universe was about as far away as you could get. "Why are you helping us?" asked Downpour. "Well, that's simple, dear," replied Verdona. "My grandson asked me to help you, and I love my grandson very much." "Who's your grandson?" wondered Shifter. Verdona's eyes narrowed slightly, and Shifter moved behind Juice. "My grandson is the shape-shifting hero whom you tried to kill tonight." Her eyes narrowed further. "Be thankful that my grandson is so forgiving. Otherwise, I'd turn you into a newt, and you wouldn't be able to turn back." Shifter gulped. The Ultiman turned when they heard the sound of a car pulling up behind them. It was a green sports car with black highlights. A brown-haired, unassuming teenager with a green hoodie stepped out from the passenger side, and a tall, blond man got out of the driver's side. Verdona waved at them, and they waved back. "I leave the rest up to you, dears." With a flash of violet light, Verdona vanished. The men walked up to the metahumans. The brunette held out his hand to Wind Dragon. "Hi," the kid said as he shook Wind Dragon's hand, "I'm Jimmy Jones, and this is Cooper. Welcome to Bellwood." Chapter 11, Dark Heart. Watchtower. "Do you think it will work?" asked Wonder Woman. "The Galvan are the smartest people in my universe," replied Grey Matter. "Of course it will work." The two Leaguers were in the science wing of the Watchtower. Wonder Woman was watching Grey Matter work on a device that he planned to install into the Ultimatrix. When he finished, all the Amazon princess saw was a silver bead. "That's it?" Grey Matter snorted. "As you should know by looking at me, size doesn't matter. Once placed into the Ultimatrix, this device will allow me to communicate with the League no matter what form I turn into. The issue of Ben's aliens lacking any long-range communication had been brought up in several meetings. In past missions, especially ones where Ben was in command, orders had to be relayed through other Leaguers. Today, Ben had decided to do something about that. "Would you hand me that pen and paper, Diana?" asked Grey Matter, holding out a small hand. As she did so, Ship entered the room. "Ship," he inquired. "In a moment, Ship, I'm almost done." Grey Matter sketched out a diagram for his human self to follow, making sure to label the directions in a way that a non-genius could follow. He then slapped the Ultimatrix dial and turned back into Ben. "Okay," he said, "let's see if this works." Following the directions he'd left himself, he placed the silver bead onto the bottom of the Ultimatrix. With a buzzing sound, the device actually went into the gauntlet. "Did it work?" asked Wonder Woman. "Only one way to find out," replied Ben. He held the Ultimatrix close to his mouth and spoke into it. "Ben to Supergirl, are you there?" "Yeah, Ben, I'm here," came Supergirl's voice from the Ultimatrix. "What's up?" "Just testing a new feature of the Ultimatrix. Now I should be able to communicate with other Leaguers, even if I'm an alien." "Sweet." "Yep, hey, Ship needs something, I'll see you in a sec." Ben turned to Ship. "Okay, buddy, what's the matter?" Ship. Ben's eyes went wide, while Wonder Woman, who still couldn't understand what the little alien was saying, raised an eyebrow. "What did he say?" Ben looked at her. "Ship says that he detected an alien presence landing on Earth." Now it was Wonder Woman's eyes that widened. "Is he sure?" "Ship's never been wrong before. All Justice League members and associates, report to the Javelin Bay for deployment," came John's voice over the PA. "We have an Omega-level threat, this is not a drill." As Ben, Wonder Woman and Ship rushed to the Javelin Bay, Ben said, "See what I mean? Nevada, containment has failed and we are taking heavy losses," came the voice of a U.S. Army commander over the radio. "Requesting emergency support, I repeat, we cannot contain them." "Sounds like the commander could use a little reassurance," said Superman, as he flew towards the conflict. "Let's hope we can give it to him," said Batman from the Batwing. "We'll give it to him all right, and then some," said Wonder Woman, piloting a javelin with a dozen other heroes in the back. Strength in numbers and all that. Next to her javelin was Ship, piloted by Ben, who had another team of heroes inside. Outside the vessels was every other hero in the League. Alien invasions," said Ben, nostalgia in his voice. "Finally, something I'm used to." Long Shadow, sitting in the co-pilot's seat, looked at him funny. "You're used to this?" The League had welcomed Long Shadow with open arms, and although he'd only been a member for a few weeks, he was already trusted and liked by most of the more veteran Leaguers. The fact that he had the trust of many of the founding members certainly didn't hurt. Ben shrugged. "I stopped my first alien invasion when I was 10, after a few years, it got to the point when I was doing that every other month." The other heroes inside of Ship laughed a little. Zatanna, who was sitting behind them, shook her head in amusement. "I still can't believe that you've been a superhero since you were that young." Further conversation ended when they reached the mesa that the aliens had landed on. The Javelin and Ship touched down, and the Leaguers rushed out. Ben activated the Ultimatrix and turned into Diamond Head. When they got outside, the heroes got their first look at the invaders. They appeared to be bulbous mechanical spiders. They were silver, red-eyed things with 4 pointed legs. They were only about a foot long and tall, so it would be difficult for the heroes who specialized in hand-to-hand combat to fight them. The main vessel, a massive, blob-like thing, sat at the top of the mesa, spilling forth hundreds of spiders. It seemed almost organic in nature, and yet Diamond Head could see parts of it that looked like a factory as well. "It's growing bigger," noted Batman, "still in the air, and it's somehow devouring everything around it, then converting it into mass." "And those spider-like things?" asked Diamond Head. "The same," answered Batman, "and once they're done with the debris from the army's attempt to beat them back, they're going to spread out to the 3 nearby towns." Diamond Head sadly noted the wreckage of several helicopters, as well as the bodies of several fallen soldiers. If only they'd gotten there sooner. He shook off the thought. It wouldn't do anyone any good if he started saying, if only. He'd feel bad after they'd saved the Earth. Diana, came John's voice in Wonder Woman's ear, I have the communications feed from the general on the ground, and I'm patching you through. This is Wonder Woman. Said the Amazon into her compiece, go ahead, General. This is General Eiling, USAF. Came an authoritative voice, we're in the process of evacuating 3 towns in the immediate vicinity, we need those things locked down. Then the first task is containment. Decided Wonder Woman. I've got something on board that might buy us some time. The Batwing flew over the main vessel and dropped a large bomb. Instead of an explosion, a thick layer of ice crept across the blob, keeping most of it locked up. Batman? Asked Wonder Woman. What was that? Thermionic gas, explained Batman, cooled to a few degrees of absolute zero. Why would you have something like that on your plane? Asked Diamond Head. I needed to freeze the Gotham River once, long story. When the main vessel froze, the spiders had turned to look at it. After a moment of staring, they turned as one and resumed their march towards the towns. The only thing standing in their way was the Justice League. Move in, shouted Superman from the sky. The heroes charged. Energy blasts, missiles, magic, and even bare fists were used. The flying heroes went to the side of the mesa, blasting or smashing the spiders on the wall, to try to cut off reinforcements to the ones already on the ground. As Diamond Head turned his arm into a large blade and sliced a spider in half, he noted that they were actually pretty weak. The only problem was that there were hundreds, maybe thousands, more to go. Alongside him, other ground-based heroes held off swarms of spiders. In order to give his ranged comrades, like Green Arrow, an advantage, Diamond Head made a ramp of diamond emerge from the ground to give them the high ground. At first, the battle on the ground looked like a stalemate until Superman and Supergirl arrived and added some heat vision-based support. Then the robots began to be pushed back. Supergirl landed next to Diamond Head. Did you miss me? She asked impishly, even as she vaporized a score of robots. Diamond Head smiled. I always miss you when you're gone. Then he fired shards of diamond from his hands to impale a dozen more spiders. Further flirting was interrupted when Wonder Woman approached, kicking a spider into the air before saying, good job, surround them and close in. Hold on a second, said Superman, as he used his X-ray vision to look underneath the main ship. To his shock, he saw tunnels leading through the mesa and leading straight to. They're right under us. His words came too late, though, as hundreds of spiders jumped out from the ground. The heroes were surprised, but they'd spent months building up their teamwork and looked out for each other. The ambush was thwarted, but not before the javelin was covered in spiders and dragged underground. Diamond Head looked up at Ship, who'd been hovering over them, firing his weapons. Ship, he yelled. We can handle things on the ground, go to the air team and provide support. Ship. The alien left to obey his friend's orders. It turned out that he didn't have to go far, because the air team had fallen back to aid the ground team. As one group, the League's power was devastating, especially against groups of weak enemies like the spiders. Long Shadow and Atom Smasher, both having grown hundreds of feet, were especially effective, able to crush 100 robots with a single step or punch. However, it still wasn't enough to stop the Silver Tide. Wonder Woman, can you hear me? Came the voice of General Eiling in Diana's ear. I'm in the town of Gold Hangar, 2 clicks from you. We're not going to get everyone out in time. You won't have to, General. Said the Martian, high above inside the watchtower. The watchtower is now in stationary orbit over the site. I am clearing the binary fusion generator for firing. The what? It converts our station's entire energy output into a single shot. It's a gun with the punch of a small nuclear weapon, General. You can't be serious. Eiling was more than a little shocked. The League was going to use a weapon of mass destruction over American soil? We're very serious. was the Martian's reply. Now pull your men back. We can't hit the aliens directly, because it could scatter them for miles, so, we're going to burn a trench around them. On the ground, Eiling ordered the men that had joined the League in combat to withdraw. The heroes themselves joined them soon after. It was a good idea, as a massive beam of energy fell from the heavens, carving a trench around the main ship, just past the line of spiders. The light was so bright, save for the heroes who had some sort of shielding over their eyes, everyone had to turn away, for fear of being blinded. When the light faded, there was a 50-foot wide, half-mile deep trench in the ground. Everyone present, even the heroes, who'd been briefed about the weapon, was left in awe. It was an incredible display of power. Watchtower the Martian looked around at the darkened station. Use of the fusion cannon had temporarily disabled all systems on board, save for life support and a few other key systems. He looked at a panel, showing that there were 59 minutes left until the power came back online. An hour until we find out if it worked. Nevada. When they had been told about the capability of Watchtower's effectiveness as a weapon, the League found its opinion divided. Some didn't think it was a good idea, while others saw it as both a weapon of last resort and a deterrent against aggression. Personally, Ben was against the weapon. He didn't like how the founding members seemed so comfortable with having such a device, nor how confident they were that no one but them could use it. In Ben's mind, people tended to use a last resort weapon as a first resort. Also, when someone was confident that something couldn't be used against them, that tended to be right when someone did just that. Still, he couldn't help but feel that, in this case, using it had been the right call. That should buy us some time until they get the townspeople out, said Superman. Now I want to learn about these things. Using his X-ray and microscopic vision, he examined the spiders, which were now trapped at the top of the mesa, peering deep into their systems, looking for weak points to attack. At the center of each one was a purple and red core, suspended by black veins. After looking at the main vessel and finding the same core, he said, I think the main spacecraft is replicating. There's some sort of near-microscopic machine at the center of each one, a kind of dark heart, building around itself. Above, inside the Batwing, Batman thought about this. We need Ray Palmer in Boston. Superman, you'll get there fastest, get to him, explain the situation, and get his help. Batman would have preferred to bring Ray Palmer, known to the League as the Atom, to the battle directly, but he'd broken his leg a few days ago while fighting a nanobot. All he'd be able to do would be to provide advice. They would have simply called him, but with the Watchtower temporarily down, so were their long-range communications. Their communicators only had a 50-mile range without it. Good idea, said Superman. As he took off, he told the others, hold the line. Boston Hospital. Ray Palmer was lying in his hospital bed, mourning his fate of being given hospital food, when he heard a commotion from outside his room. He sat up as Superman came in. Hello, Superman, Ray said as he shook Superman's hand. What brings you to Boston? An Omega-level situation. Ray's eyes went wide. Tell me everything. Nevada. 1 hour later, as Batman made another strafing run, he noticed Superman's signal appear on his instruments. Got an ETA yet? He asked. We need you. Soon. Replied Superman, how's the trench holding up? What trench? As Batman flew over the swarm of spiders, he glanced down at what was the trench. A few minutes after Superman had left, the spiders had spent a half-hour using their own bodies as a series of bridges, allowing their brethren to scurry across them. The League had destroyed the bridges several times, but they were swiftly rebuilt. On the ground, many of the Leaguers were getting tired. Ben had had to pull back for a few minutes to allow the Ultimatrix to recharge. It was actually the first time he'd ever had to do that in a fight before. The Batwing fired a pair of missiles, destroying a pack of spiders, before banking off. That was the last of my useful armaments, Batman said. I can't do any more. As he pulled away, several tiger-like robots burst through the ice and landed atop the Batwing. After securing themselves, they began to tear at the plane. Batman opened the cockpit and knocked a tiger off, then threw a pair of explosive batarangs, destroying 2 more. Only one was left, and it was inches from ripping off his face. In response, Batman pulled the eject lever, launching himself out of the plane. Before he could get far, the last tiger fired lasers from its mouth, destroying his parachute. Now, Batman was in free fall. "Batman to all points," he said as he fell, "I could use some air support. Since I can't fly at all." He was only 100 feet from the ground. Now would be good. At merely 20 feet from the ground, Batman was picked up by a familiar green alien ship. "Find Wonder Woman and get us down," ordered Batman. The two landed next to Wonder Woman, Ben, now as Brainstorm, and Supergirl, who were fighting a pack of spiders just as Superman landed next to them. "The spiders are forcing us back," Batman explained to Superman, "and the mothership is releasing a mechanical attack tiger to protect them. Tell me that the Atom gave you something useful." "This is a losing battle," added Wonder Woman. "If we destroy one, the main vessel breeds 3 more. Superman nodded in understanding. "These things build copies of themselves, using whatever material is around. They'll only stop when everything is gone. It would be a probable implication that these monstrosities will not cease once they arrive at the trio of neighboring towns," suggested Brainstorm. Superman nodded again. "Right, they'll go coast to coast, then across the seabed. They'll use rock, metal, plastic, plant life, people," finished Batman. "Yes, and destroying the spiders, or even damaging the main ship, won't be enough. We'll have to shut down the core itself." Said Brainstorm, "I do believe that I have discovered a way to facilitate that option." "How are you going to do that, Ben?" asked Supergirl. In response, Brainstorm slapped the Ultimatrix dial. "Heat blast." The fiery alien looked at the others. "All I have to do is get close. Once I do, I can get inside and take care of the core. Once I'm inside, I'll need Superman to guide me to the core, since I won't know where I'm going." "Are you sure you can do this?" asked Wonder Woman. Heat Blast gave her a thumbs up. "Nothing I haven't done before, I'll just need to be a lot smaller." Batman nodded, then reached for his communicator. "All points, this is Batman, we have a new plan. We have to get Heat Blast to the main vessel. Superman and Wonder Woman will get him there, half of us back them up. Everyone else, we draw a line here. No one is going to die because of us." He turned to Heat Blast. "Go." Heat Blast nodded, then shot flames from his feet and launched into the air. "Let's go to work," said Superman as he, Wonder Woman and half of the Justice League joined him. As they smashed apart packs of spiders, Superman saw that they would soon be overwhelmed. "We need more cover." Batman destroyed a spider before reaching for his communicator. Supergirl, Green Lantern, more air support for Heat Blast. Heat Blast and the others had some of the pressure taken off when Supergirl and Green Lantern rained down heat vision and energy blasts, respectively. Heat Blast gave a mock salute, then continued on his way. Batman was about to be overrun by dozens of spiders before ship arrived, blasting them apart with a myriad of alien weaponry. Before Batman could order ship elsewhere, the alien turned into a blob and enveloped the Dark Knight. After a moment, Batman stood in a green and black battlesuit. Just for his new pilot, Ship had added pointed ears to the helmet section and a bat symbol on the chest. After getting over his surprise, Batman let a small smile creep across his face as he turned to fight another pack of spiders. 2 blades emerged from the forearms of the armor as he charged, slicing them apart as he ran. Seeing victory so close, the other Leaguers pushed forward, putting all of their energy into one final counteroffensive. So great was their attack that the spiders were actually pushed back for a time. As Heat Blast's team approached the base of the mothership, a pair of attack tigers emerged, pouncing on both Superman and Wonder Woman. The two were knocked down. Heat Blast turned to help them. "We're fine," yelled Wonder Woman. "Take care of the core." Nodding, Heat Blast flew towards the mothership. He was joined by Supergirl and Green Lantern a moment later. They eventually made it to a small opening in the ship. Supergirl could see that it was too small for even gray matter, so how was Ben going to get inside? Heat Blast slapped the Ultimatrix dial and, after a flash of green light, disappeared. "Nanomech," yelled a tiny voice. "Ben?" asked Supergirl. "Down here." Supergirl looked down to see a tiny, silver and green cycloptic creature waving at her. He looked like an armored fairy. Supergirl nodded. "Go," she yelled as she smashed another spider. Without another word, Nanomech jumped into the belly of the beast. After a few minutes of sliding down what could only be described as veins, Nanomech spread his wings and began searching for the core. With Superman in battle and Supergirl not knowing what to look for, he was going to have to get lucky. Thankfully, he was, and after a few minutes of crawling through more veins, he stumbled across the core of the Dark Heart, as the League now referred to it. "I'm at the core," said Nanomech into his communicator, not really knowing who was receiving, if anyone was at all. "What's your status?" came Batman's voice from the Ultimatrix dial. "I'm approaching the core and whoa," Nanomech cried out as he tripped. As his hand slid across the floor, an image popped up next to him, slowly turning into some sort of documentary. "What happened?" asked Batman. "It looks like this thing carries its own history," said Nanomech as the history played out. As he watched, he came to a realization. "Batman. This thing is actually a weapon." "What was your first clue?" said Batman sarcastically. Nanomech explained as the images played out. There were two planets at war. The Dark Heart's creators launched it at the other side. Nanomech's eye widened in horror at what he saw next. It ate an entire planet. And then it kept going. It would reproduce, go to the next planet and reproduce again. It's possible that this war was fought across an entire galaxy. Then Nanomech looked at the code being played out at the bottom of the image. "But I think the war ended a long time ago. If I'm reading this right, the original ship is over 50,000 years old." Nanomech saw a shadow behind him and dodged just in time to avoid several metal tendrils, covered in what was probably a very painful energy field. He kept dodging, but one of the tendrils slammed into him, knocking him under the heart. "Arg! Ben? Ben?" Nanomech stood shakily. "I'm okay, Batman, just a little stunned by the defenses." "Okay, I'm gonna try to destroy this thing now." He raised his hands and fired bolts of green electricity at the heart. For a moment, the core flickered and dimmed. A slot opened in the side of the heart, but then the systems went back to normal. "Okay, what was that?" Nanomech walked over to the slot and discovered that it opened to the very heart of, well, the heart. He must have triggered some sort of maintenance hatch. Shrugging at his apparent good fortune, he poured all of his power into the inner core. The heart began to shake. Nanomech figured that he was like a reverse defibrillator. Instead of reviving a heart, he was killing it. The veins holding up the heart began to spasm, and the liquid inside them began to boil. Some of them were even starting to leak. After another few seconds of sustained power from Nanomech, the Dark Heart exploded. Outside, the battle was going badly. There wasn't a single Leaguer who wasn't injured, and some were on the verge of being killed by the overwhelming numbers. While Nanomech had been inside the ship, the spiders had been supported by much larger versions, dubbed Mega Spiders, which went after the more powerful members, such as Long Shadow, Atom Smasher, Wonder Woman, Superman and Supergirl. All of those heroes were on the ground, weighed down by sheer numbers. Wonder Woman in particular was barely keeping a bladed limb from impaling her face. The Mega Spider lifted its leg for one more blow when the Dark Heart erupted. Purple liquid flowed out of every orifice, and the structure itself seemed to sag. When it did so, the spiders, Mega Spiders and Attack Tigers all stopped. Some froze, others flopped onto their sides, but the result was still the same. The Justice League had won. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Ship, now in his normal form, and Supergirl approached the Dark Heart, searching for Ben. So far, they'd been unsuccessful. Other Leaguers had offered to help, but aside from the 5 who were searching, everyone else was too injured to do much. After a while, the heroes were getting worried, especially Supergirl. Another small stream of purple liquid began to pour out of the dead husk. Superman paid no attention to it at first, but then he noticed a ripple coming from the pool forming around the leak. "There," he said, pointing, "is that?" Before their eyes, a familiar green light flashed, and they saw Ben Tennyson, covered in purple slime and looking weak, but very much alive. He glanced up and stared at them. They stared right back. "That," he said after a moment, "was disgusting." The Leaguer smiled and walked up to him. Supergirl, on the other hand, rushed forward and wrapped him up in a tight embrace. "Kara. Sorry." A few hours later, Ben was fine, though he greatly desired a shower. The other members of the League were quick to congratulate and thank him after he told them what happened. After all, by destroying the Dark Heart, he'd saved all their lives as well. As the Justice League recovered from their injuries, and Ben turned into Diamond Head, the army arrived and began removing the dead robots and the Dark Heart itself. The process was overseen by General Eiling. Superman approached him. "I don't suppose you need any help destroying that. Wouldn't want that technology falling into the wrong hands." "We could learn a lot from this," said Eiling. "It almost beat the Justice League, after all." "Why would you need something to do that, General?" asked Wonder Woman, her arms folded over her chest. "Oh, I don't know," said Eiling, "maybe because it turns out that the Justice League has had a secret, space-based weapon of mass destruction all along." He glared at her. "And we're going to be talking about that soon, believe me." He saluted. "Ma'am." Then he got onto a helicopter and left, just as the Justice League was gathering together. "Amazing," commented Green Arrow, "show him a weapon that destroys everything it sees, and he wants to play with it." He turned to Diamond Head. "What's to stop history from repeating itself right here on Earth?" Diamond Head gave him a determined look. "We are." San Francisco. Ben sat on his couch, relaxing after a long day of saving the world. Like the rest of the League, he was wiped out. Considering what had happened just a few hours earlier, the League had been given a mandatory 3 days off. Anyone who'd been seriously hurt during the battle had been given a longer vacation, but Ben was just glad to have a few days without being a superhero. He was about to doze off when he heard a knock at his door. Suppressing a groan, he dragged himself over to his door and opened it. He was surprised to see his girlfriend standing there. "Kara?" he asked. "What's up?" Kara shrugged. "I don't know, I guess, after today, I just wanted to spend some time with you." Ben smiled. "Sure, come on in." They both walked over to the couch and sat down heavily. Ben stretched out his arms, while Kara pulled her legs close to her chest and leaned into Ben's side. Ben wrapped his arm around her, and the two just sat there. Neither said anything for a while. "I was worried about you," said Kara. Ben looked at her. "And I was worried about you, too, but danger is part of the job." Kara nodded but still looked upset. "I know, but still. I lost my whole world once. I don't want to lose anyone else that I care about." Ben tilted her face towards his and gave her a gentle kiss. "You won't." While Kara enjoyed the kiss, she wasn't convinced. "How can you know that?" Ben smiled. "Look at it this way, you're practically indestructible, and I've got more powers than the entire League put together. I think we can handle ourselves, and we can take care of those who can't." Kara felt a little better, but she didn't want to let her boyfriend out of her sight for at least the next couple of days. "Can I stay here for a couple of days?" she asked as she closed her eyes. Ben would have been a little shocked at Kara's request had he not known that she just needed to be with him. It had been a close call today, after all. "Sure thing, Kara." Ben then thought of something. What about Clark?" Kara smiled, even as she felt more tired. "Don't worry, Ben. He knows, and he said he'd bring my stuff over tomorrow morning." Ben's smile returned, even as his own eyes became heavy. "Okay, Kara, good night, I love you." Then both of them realized what Ben had said, and they returned to full wakefulness. Neither had ever actually said the words, "I love you," to the other. It was a step in their relationship that they hadn't taken yet. "What did you say?" asked a wide-eyed Kara, as if she couldn't believe what she'd heard. Ben, equally wide-eyed, looked back at her. "I love you," he said slowly. A tender smile spread over Kara's face as she snuggled back into Ben's side. "I love you, too," she whispered. Both fell asleep soon after, happy being in each other's arms and in each other's hearts. Chapter 12, Wake the Dead. The Tower of Fate. Aquaman, king of Atlantis, had fought monsters, robots, demons and even traitors to the throne. Right now, however, he'd face all of them combined for the opportunity to make his current opponent more challenging. "It's your move, Hawk Girl." Across the chessboard sat Shayera Hole, an expression of apathy on her face. To the side of them sat Amazo, watching the game with interest. Shayera moved a piece, only to have it taken by Aquaman's queen. "Check in 5 moves, he declared. "We'll see," responded Shayera. Considering how badly he was beating her, Aquaman didn't really doubt that he'd win. "Diana told me you used to regularly beat Batman. Difficult to believe from the current, pitiful level of your game." Shayera said nothing as she moved another piece. Aquaman responded with a move of his own, then said, "I should have known better than to expect a proper challenge from a woman." Aquaman didn't mean it. He was only trying to bring the old Shayera back, even though the old Shayera would have punched him in the face for his comment. Once again, Shayera said nothing. "Such scintillating repartee," he said sarcastically, then sighed. "I get better conversation from the android." Amazo tilted his head at Aquaman's comment. "Are you aware that I am in the room?" As soon as Shayera made another move, Aquaman responded and said, "Check." Shayera stared at the board for a moment, then knocked over her king, signifying that she had given up. "I win again," Aquaman said sarcastically, "Huzzah." "It's just a game," replied Shayera. Rather upset that she'd given up so easily, Aquaman knocked the board across the room. "You disgust me," he growled. Again, it was an attempt to provoke a reaction from the old Shayera. Instead, she simply stood up and looked him in the eye. "Join the club." Then she walked out of the room. "I could have told you that wouldn't work." Aquaman turned to see Dr. Fate step out of the shadows. "She was once one of the fiercest warriors I'd ever met," said Aquaman. "What's she doing here?" "Trying to find her way," answered Fate. "Leaving the Justice League was difficult for her. I provided her sanctuary, a place to meditate on her life and future. We must allow her the time she needs to." Fate trailed off and touched his helmet for a moment. "Excuse me." He lifted into the air as a purple ink appeared behind him, then he disappeared. Before Aquaman could wonder what had happened, the fallen chessboard in pieces floated across his vision and set themselves up. The android looked up from where he was sitting. "New game?" Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Dr. Fate approached the grave of a man he'd helped bury and knew that there was a problem. The grave was empty. He reached for his communicator. "John?" "It's Dr. Fate." He stared at the headstone of Solomon Grundy. "We may have a problem." The Tower of Fate. The Tower of Fate had a meditation garden hidden away in a pocket dimension. Shayera used it whenever she was upset. She came here often. She went to her usual spot but saw Inza tending to some flowers. Dr. Fate's wife looked up at the Thanagarian. "I wasn't expecting you back so soon." She stood up to leave. The garden needed work. As she made to leave, Shayera stopped her. "Don't go, Inza, this is your place, I'm just a visitor here." "My husband and I have offered you our hospitality," replied Inza. "We respect your privacy. Treat this area as you would your own home." As she walked away, Shayera said, "Aquaman thinks I've been here too long." Inza turned to her. Flowers bloom when they're ready, Shayera, not before. Shayera looked down. I'm no flower, I don't know what I am. I'm not Lieutenant Shayera Whole of the Thanagarian Empire, not anymore. I've been stripped of my rank and exiled from my homeworld. I'm not Hawk Girl, that was always a sham. She sounded on the verge of tears. Most people on Earth will never trust me again and I can't blame them. When I do my job, people get hurt, people I care about. Inza looked at her. And what happens when you don't do your job? Then she left, leaving Shayera alone with her thoughts. San Francisco. After Ben and Kara admitted that they were in love with each other, the two began spending more time together. Kara would often stay at Ben's house for several days at a time, yet no one had a problem with that. Not even overprotective Clark. In fact, when he delivered Kara's things after that first night, he'd actually smiled a little. Eventually, the two fell into a rhythm of Kara staying at Ben's house for a few days of every other week. They weren't quite ready to permanently move in together, but they did believe that it would happen one day. Remarkably, despite their intensifying relationship, they still kept a professional attitude while working, a quality that everyone in the League found admirable. The only thing that really changed with regard to the League was that Ben and Supergirl were put together on missions more often. According to the Martian, it was because they worked well together. Okay, Kara, do you want the pasta, or do you want to order out tonight? Ben asked as he and Kara were walking back to Ben's house. Kara thought about it for a minute. I say we order out, then watch that action movie while we wait. Ben smiled as they reached the house. Sounds good to me. No sooner had they entered than John contacted them. Ben, Supergirl, we have a situation. The two heroes looked at each other for a moment. Yes, dinner's off for now, said Ben, then he spoke into the Ultimatrix. What's the problem, John? Solomon Grundy has returned and is attacking Baton Rouge. I'm sending you and Supergirl, along with Green Lantern and Vixen, to stop him. As Kara went to get into her costume, Ben asked, that's a lot of muscle, John. Is Grundy really that big a threat? Sure, he'd read about Grundy in the case files, but from what he could tell, the zombie had always attacked after someone attacked him first. And while he was incredibly strong and tough, Superman alone could beat him. Sending Supergirl, himself, Vixen and Green Lantern seemed like overkill. It is necessary. Grundy has already killed 3 people, and many more are in danger. Ben's eyes narrowed. Okay, no more sympathy was going to be given to the zombie. He turned to see Supergirl, an angry expression on her face. I heard, she said, let's go. Baton Rouge. Supergirl and Ben, now as Jet Ray, were teleported to Baton Rouge just in time to see a police car fly through the air. Before either of them could do anything, Green Lantern showed up to grab the car with his ring. They flew over to him, where they were met by Vixen. Hey Lantern, greeted Jet Ray. Hey, Vixen. Ben had worked with Vixen before. She was an African-American woman with short, black hair. She wore a revealing orange bodysuit with claws. The necklace she wore allowed her to tap into the powers of animals. Coupled with her natural athleticism, she was a force to be reckoned with. Hey, you two, said Vixen with a smile, I guess this is a double date, huh? Another fact about Vixen was that she was very attracted to Green Lantern. The feeling wasn't mutual, however. Apparently, Lantern was still holding out for a certain red-headed Thanagarian. Still, that didn't mean that Vixen couldn't try. Maybe, said Supergirl, but I've never considered zombie fighting to be my way of enjoying a night on the town. Come on, said Lantern, we've got to move. He flew off, the other 3 heroes right behind him. Dr. Fate called it in to John, said Lantern. Solomon Grundy's back. The zombie guy? Asked Vixen. He's a heavy hitter. Green Lantern nodded. Yeah, he's tough, but we can take him. Funny thing, though, is that he's supposed to be dead. Aren't all zombies, by definition, dead? Asked Jet Ray. The 2 women laughed, while Lantern tried to come up with a response. Before he could, though, a loud roar shook the air. The heroes looked ahead to find people fleeing in fear. The street was littered with debris, crushed cars, and flames. They saw a bus slowly rise into the air, held by Solomon Grundy. The zombie was big, close to 10 feet tall, and nearly 6 feet wide. He was pale-skinned, all muscle, and covered with the rags he'd died in so many years ago. "Ah, man, don't do it," said Lantern, seeing Grundy heft the bus. With a roar, Grundy hurled it through the air. "I've got it," yelled Jet Ray as he moved to intercept the bus. When he got in front of it, he slapped the Ultimatrix dial. Lodestar. Using his magnetic powers, Lodestar halted the bus in midair and slowly lowered it to the ground. While Grundy picked up another car to throw, Vixen tapped into the power of the elephant, and she and Supergirl slammed into him. They crashed through a truck and then into a building before Grundy grabbed them by the wrists and jumped back outside. He slammed them against the floor, then threw Vixen against a fence and Supergirl into a light pole. Supergirl wasn't used to pain. Only kryptonite and magic could really hurt her or another Kryptonian. Since she didn't feel the weakness associated with kryptonite, and Grundy had been human, that could only mean that the zombie was being affected by magic somehow. And that magic hurt. Vixen, on the other hand, was badly bruised, her costume was torn, and her arm was broken. Grundy moved to attack her, but he was interrupted by Green Lantern peppering him with energy blasts and Lodestar throwing cars at him. While the guys kept him distracted, Supergirl rose to her feet, shaking off the pain. She moved over to Vixen, who was clutching her broken arm. "Are you okay?" she asked. In response, Vixen touched her necklace again, tapping into the regenerative power of the lizard. With a few sickening pops, the arm was healed. She nodded at Supergirl, and the two moved to support their teammates. Green Lantern had Grundy wrapped in emerald energy, while Lodestar wrapped him in several car doors. Grundy roared in anger, but the two heroes thought they had him. They were proven wrong, however, when Grundy somehow floated into the air. A pulse of energy flew from him, shattering his bonds. Both heroes were sent flying in opposite directions. Supergirl moved to catch Lodestar, while Vixen tapped into the power of the cheetah to catch Lantern. The sudden change in air pressure had knocked Green Lantern unconscious. As Vixen tried to revive him, she heard very large footsteps behind her. She turned to see Grundy approach them. She flexed her claws, prepared to defend her teammate. "Come with it, then." Just as Grundy was about to crush her, a blue and red blur smashed into the zombie, sending him flying. Superman looked down at Vixen, who was again tending to Green Lantern. "Get Lantern somewhere safe," ordered the Man of Steel, as Supergirl and Ben, who turned into Big Chill, caught up with him. "I could have handled him," protested Vixen, as a loud roar echoed from down the street. Superman, Supergirl and Big Chill prepared themselves. "You may get your chance," said Superman. "In the meantime, humor me." As Grundy approached, Superman tried to reason with him. "Come on, Grundy, we've been through this before, you don't have a chance against me. Let's talk it over, maybe I can help." "I don't think he's in the talking mood," warned Supergirl. "Yeah, if he was, I don't think he would have thrown that bus," added Big Chill. Grundy made no response, save for charging forward and smashing his fists into the ground. He would have hit the heroes had they not taken to the air. Superman rushed towards him, hoping to finish this quickly. Instead, Grundy caught Superman's fist with his own. He didn't even flinch. Both Supergirl's and Big Chill's eyes widened. The number of people who could catch one of Superman's punches could be counted on one hand, and Grundy's case file did not suggest that the zombie qualified to be on that list. Apparently, something had changed. Grundy tightened his fist. The bones in Superman's hand started to crack before Grundy delivered an uppercut that sent Superman flying a dozen blocks away. Supergirl tried to attack next but was backhanded into a truck. The zombie charged towards Big Chill, ramming him with his shoulder. The blue Mothman collapsed near Supergirl. "Though you'd have gone intangible," moaned Supergirl as she started to get up. "That's the thing," said Big Chill, pain evident in his voice, "I did go intangible, whatever's powering this guy is crazy." They heard a roar behind them and saw Grundy marching towards them. Here we go again, they both thought. The Tower of Fate checkmate. You are improving. This time it took me 16 moves to defeat you. Aquaman glared at the android. That's nearly double the moves it took last time. Aquaman sighed. Set up the board. Before Amazo did just that, a purple ink flared into existence, and Dr. Fate returned to them. Though his face was covered by his helmet, he seemed greatly disturbed. Without preamble, he announced, "Solomon Grundy's grave is empty." Aquaman stood, rage on his face. "Tell me where to find those responsible, then dig more graves." Though Grundy had been a criminal for his entire life and unlife, he'd sacrificed himself to save the universe from an extra-dimensional invasion. That should have assured him a peaceful, undisturbed rest. Fate shook his head. "We are dealing with something far more sinister than mere human avarice. Grundy's grave was forced open from the inside and the site reeks of chaos magic." Amazo was intrigued by this. He left under his own power. Far more power than he ever evidenced before. Fate held out a hand, and an orb appeared that showed the ongoing battle. Behold! The orb showed Grundy holding a Kryptonian by the cape in either hand, while Green Lantern and Heat Blast attacked him. Distracted, Grundy momentarily forgot about the alien cousins and jumped into the air, punching Heat Blast into a building, then throwing a rock at Green Lantern, knocking him down. As the images continued, Aquaman said, "They need our help. So does Grundy." The three turned to see Shiera walking up to them. "Let's try and get there before the League kills him." Amazo turned back to the orb, which now showed Grundy using Vixen like a baseball bat to knock Supergirl away. That scenario seems unlikely. "In any case, are you certain you're up to this?" asked Fate. "Doesn't matter," said Shiera. "Bad guy or not, he sacrificed his life to save ours. We owe him the benefit of the doubt." "Very well," said Fate, who held out his hand. A white hole appeared in thin air. "I've learned the hard way that the energy-dampening properties of this device can disrupt fundamental forces, so I've kept it hidden in a pocket dimension, away from the magic that must flow freely in my home. But if you are truly ready to take up the fight again..." Shiera hesitated only for a moment before plunging her hand into the hole and withdrawing a spiked mace. Her spiked mace. She hefted it in one hand. "I'm ready." Baton Rouge, this is not going well, thought Swampfire, as he was thrown into the side of a bus. While the blow didn't really hurt, thanks to his regeneration, he was getting smacked around a lot. At one point, he considered going way big but dismissed the idea. Grundy was strong enough to kick Superman's butt, and way big might cause more damage to the city than Grundy. Grundy jumped at Swampfire, but before he landed on him, Supergirl collided with him fists first and knocked him to the ground. In response, Grundy lifted her up by her leg and smashed her into the ground repeatedly. She was saved when Superman punched him in the face while Swampfire tackled his legs from behind. "Get her somewhere safe," yelled Superman. Swampfire nodded, then slapped the Ultimatrix dial. Spider Monkey. Ben was now a blue-furred monkey with 6 eyes and 4 arms. The Ultimatrix symbol was displayed on his chest. He scooped up Supergirl and ran to the top of a building. As he laid her down on the ground, he had to marvel at Kryptonian healing. Even with the damage they'd sustained, Superman and Supergirl only needed a couple of minutes before they were back in the fight. "Ugh!" moaned Supergirl, then she opened her eyes. "Ben? Why are you a monkey?" "Oh, right," said Spider Monkey in a high-pitched voice, scratching his head, "I don't think I ever showed you this one." As Supergirl slowly got back up, they saw Grundy crash into Superman. The shockwave from the impact caused a building to collapse. Spider Monkey saw 2 people still inside, a boy and a young woman. He saw Vixen going for the kid, so he shot a string of webbing from his tail and swung to the woman. "Come on," he yelled, holding out a hand, "I'll get you out of here." The woman fearfully put her hand in his, and he swung her to safety just as the whole building fell in on itself. As they landed on the street, he noticed Vixen had successfully saved the kid. Meanwhile, Green Lantern was blasting away at Grundy with his ring, but Grundy only clapped his hands together. The shockwave sent Lantern flying through the air, as well as shattering the windows of every building in a 5-block radius. Superman tried rushing the zombie again, but Grundy grabbed 2 cars and made him into the filling of a very bizarre sandwich. When he pulled the cars away, Superman swayed on his feet until Grundy hit him with an uppercut that sent him flying into the supports of a bridge that passed over the bay. The bridge started to collapse now that 2 of its supports were gone. As the bridge began to destabilize, Aquaman rose from the water. Under his feet was the largest octopus that anyone had ever seen. Under Aquaman's mental commands, the octopus wrapped its tentacles around the supports and brought them back into place until Supergirl flew up and cemented them into place with her heat vision. However, one car that had been on the edge of the bridge began to fall. As it did, Shiera flew over, ripped the car roof off with her mace, and pulled the frightened mother and daughter inside to safety, just before the car hit the water. Shiera watched the family hug in relief, then run off, just as Green Lantern flew over. For a moment, he couldn't believe it. "Shiera?" he asked. The Thanagarian in question looked him up and down. "I hate the beard," she commented. Then Spider Monkey, Supergirl, Superman and Vixen arrived. "You okay?" Lantern asked Superman. Superman shot him a look. His costume was torn, and he was covered in cuts and bruises, and now, he was soaking wet. "Do I look okay?" "Wow," said Spider Monkey, "fancy seeing you here, Shiera." Shiera was confused by the strange creature talking to her, so Spider Monkey said, "Maybe this'll jog your memory." He slapped the Ultimatrix dial. "Humongosaur." "Oh, Ben," said Shiera. "Sorry I didn't recognize you." "No problem," said Humongosaur as he turned to the others. "Now, where were we?" Green Lantern crossed his arms. "We were about to kick Grundy's undead. Perhaps we can be of assistance," said Dr. Fate as he appeared in front of them, as did Aquaman and Amazo. "Hey, Amazo," said Humongosaur, waving to the android, "how've you been?" Amazo looked at him for a moment. Ben had been the only one besides Dr. Fate and Aquaman to have any contact with him, and the human had taken steps to actually be his friend. In fact, Amazo considered Ben to be his first friend. "I am well. I wish to aid you against this threat." Superman shook his head. "Okay, let's throw our big guns at him. Me, Fate, Humongosaur, Supergirl and the android." He leaned close to Fate. "You let him out of the tower now?" "I was curious to see if you would try to dissuade him," replied Fate. "Hold up." The heroes turned to Shiera. "Before Golden Boy teleports him into the sun, I want to try talking to him." She spread her wings and flew off. "Shiera!" shouted Green Lantern, but she was gone. It wasn't hard for Shiera to find Grundy. He was pushing a building, though for what reason, she couldn't tell. "Grundy!" she yelled. Grundy turned towards her with a glare, but Shiera stepped towards him. "It's me, remember, Birdnose," she referred to what Grundy had always called her. Instead of recognizing her, like she'd hoped, Grundy grabbed Shiera and slammed her into a wall. Dazed, Shiera could only watch as Grundy lifted an arm to crush her, but a large, brown hand grabbed Grundy's limb and threw him into the air. "Pick on someone your own size," growled Humongosaur. In response, Grundy grabbed Humongosaur's tail and hurled him several blocks away. With a groan, Humongosaur picked himself up, twisted the Ultimatrix dial, then slapped it. Ultimate Humongosaur, he charged back into the fray, where he saw Superman and Supergirl punch Grundy on either side of his head, knocking him back a step. Dr. Fate flew in and blasted the zombie with bolts of mystic power, while Aquaman slashed at him with his hook. Green Lantern joined the fight, blasting at the same time as Ultimate Humongosaur's energy cannons. "What's happened to him?" asked Shiera about Grundy. I'm sorry, said Dr. Fate, I sense nothing of the Grundy we know within that shell, he is nothing but rage. Then it is time I brought this to an end. Amazo raised a hand, which was surrounded by a golden aura. Shayera jumped in front of the android. No! Don't hurt him. Amazo moved her aside with telekinesis, then began to bombard Grundy with unquantifiable power. The other heroes moved back to avoid getting atomized. In my travels through space, I've attained mastery of forces all but incomprehensible to humans. Wait. Instead of falling in defeat, Grundy seemed to be getting larger. Something is wrong, the creature is somehow feeding on my energies. He adds my power to his own. With a telepathic cry, Amazo fell back, only to be caught by Ultimate Humongosaur. My presence here puts you all at risk. I will retreat several light-years distance until I can determine how to counter this effect. In a flash of golden light, Amazo vanished, leaving only a small wisp of smoke behind. The heroes stared at the smoke for a moment, looked at each other, and then charged Grundy. Superman punched him across the face, only to be knocked to the ground by Grundy's fist. Supergirl flew feet first into Grundy's stomach, but she was grabbed by the face and thrown across the water, skipping like a stone. Ultimate Humongosaur tackled him like a football player, crashing through several buildings until Grundy pushed back, ending up at the place they'd started. Tell us something, document. Green Lantern said to Fate. Grundy was revived with chaos magic, explained Fate, a cumulative with no known upper limit. My magics are as useless as Amazo's technology. Then I say we take him out the old-fashioned way, declared Vixen. She ran to an enormous statue and, using her animal strength and claws, began to tear great gouges out of the stone. Seeing what she was doing, the others led Grundy to the right place, then Ultimate Humongosaur rammed the statue with his shoulder. The statue fell right on top of the zombie, and for the first time since the fight began, it was quiet. As Supergirl hopped onto the rubble of the statue, Superman shook his head. No way it's that easy. Sure it is, argued Supergirl, the android half-fried him with the cosmic thing, all we had to do was seal the deac. She was interrupted when Grundy burst out of the rubble, grabbing Supergirl by the throat and ankles. Ultimate Humongosaur fired a volley of energy from his cannons. Put her down, he barked. You heard the man. Shayera gave an avian cry as she slammed her mace, crackling with energy, into Grundy's side. For the first time, the zombie gave a roar of pain, then fell to his knees. Superman crashed into him, causing Grundy to lose his grip on Supergirl. Ultimate Humongosaur caught her and gently put her down. As Grundy landed on the ground, Shayera approached him, mace in hand. Don't make me do this, Grundy, she begged. Grundy only stared at her, drool pouring from his mouth, before he roared and charged again. Shayera spun around his attack and slammed her mace into his back. Grundy gave another roar of pain but attacked again. Again and again, Shayera swung her mace, and each time she did, Grundy became weaker. Finally, Shayera took to the sky, then dove, striking Grundy as hard as she could. The zombie was knocked through the street and into the sewer below. The heroes approached the large hole Shayera had created. Lantern swung a light generated from his ring. I can't see him, he declared after a moment. Neither can I, said Superman, there must be lead in those old sewer pipes. Guy tends to leave a trail, said Supergirl. We'll find him. And then Pretty Polly here can bash him with her magic mace, finished Vixen. Why does it hurt him? Asked Shayera, as she looked at her weapon curiously. It's made of nth metal, explained Fate. Your people's technology was built specifically to repel magical creatures, it disrupts the magic that animates him. The creature knows only rage and seeks only oblivion. Your mace may be the one thing that can grant him peace. What are you saying? Asked Green Lantern. Your favorite movie is Old Yeller, you know exactly what he's saying. Shayera looked down at her feet. Is this my destiny? To be a destroyer? To betray yet another friend? It's not that simple, said Fate. It never was. Hey. Everyone turned to Vixen. How about we discuss it for another couple of hours? That way, he's sure to get away. Only you have the power to put that creature out of its misery, said Aquaman to Shiera, to stop it before it hurts anyone else. Shiera looked at her mace, fear and uncertainty written all over her face. Green Lantern stepped up to her. You don't have to do it, Shiera, he said. I'll do it for you, give me the mace. For a moment, Shiera stared at him, then her face hardened with resolve. Forget it, John, he was my friend, it's my responsibility. She closed her eyes. I'll do it. Not alone. The others turned to Ultimate Humongosaur. You need someone to find him first. He slapped the Ultimatrix dial, turning into Humongosaur, then slapped it again. Blitzwolfer. In front of them stood what looked like a werewolf with a four-pronged jaw, the Ultimatrix dial on his chest. Are you sure, Ben? Asked Supergirl. Blitzwolfer turned to Fate. Are you absolutely sure that nothing can be done to help him? Fate nodded. It is merely an empty husk that desires its own destruction. There is nothing inside, no mind, no emotion save for rage, no soul. Blitzwolfer sighed. Then I'm sure. Without another word, the two jumped in after Grundy. For half an hour, the two aliens walked wordlessly through the sewers, their way illuminated by the glow from Shiera's mace, only stopping when Blitzwolfer sniffed the air for Grundy's scent. You don't have to do this, Ben, Shiera finally said. I already said that I can take care of this. Grundy was my friend, after all. Blitzwolfer shook his head. And I already told you, you need my help to find him. Besides, Grundy might be your friend, but you're my friend. Shiera stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Thank you. Blitzwolfer froze, then started sniffing the air. That way, he said, pointing. They ran down the next tunnel and found Solomon Grundy. He was slumped against the wall, panting heavily. He stared at them, then started to growl. Shoo, it's okay. Shiera gently whispered, I know what you want, what you need. Grundy seemed to understand her intentions and relaxed. Blitzwolfer looked down, he knew what was coming next. Close your eyes. Grundy did so. Shiera raised the mace. On the surface, while a crowd of news crews and civilians was gathering, two of the heroes were pacing. Both Green Lantern and Supergirl were worried about someone important to them. They've been down there too long, announced Supergirl. She's right, said Lantern, we should go in after them. Just before they did so, Shiera flew up out of the hole, while Blitzwolfer followed with a bounding leap. The other heroes rushed to them, but they said nothing, their heads were lowered. It's over. Was all Shiera said, Blitzwolfer affirming with a nod. The others lowered their heads in respect to the fallen. Shiera moved away, and the reporters began to bombard her with questions. Hawkgirl, one asked, do you think today's acts can possibly make up for your complicity in the Thanagarian invasion of Earth? Do you have a comment on your dismissal from the Justice League? Another asked. Hawkgirl was never dismissed from the Justice League, said Green Lantern, as he and the other heroes caught up to her. She can come back whenever she likes. Shiera stared at him in shock, while he shrugged. I recused myself because, well, you know, anyway, Superman broke the tie. Superman smiled when Shiera turned to him. I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. But mostly, he said as he placed his hand on her shoulder, I believe in my friends. Traitor. The heroes turned to see several people cursing at her and throwing other insults. Apparently, some people didn't want to give the same second chances as Superman. Hey, back off, snapped Green Lantern. Yeah, said Blitzwolfer, she doesn't have to take that from you. Yes, I do. The two turned to Shiera. But it's okay, I guess I deserve some of that. As she walked off, a hand grabbed hers. It belonged to the little girl she'd saved earlier. Thank you, Miss Angel. The girl said, a smile on her face. Shayera gave a smile back, then felt a hand on her shoulder. "You deserve that, too," said Ben. Finally, as the sun started to rise, the Leaguers went home. Chapter 13. The Once and Future Thing, Part 1. Bellwood. Underneath the city of Bellwood was a sprawling base, home to hundreds of the most dedicated and skilled law enforcement agents in the universe. The plumbers. All of the plumbers were good at their jobs, but the leaders of the Earth Precinct were some of the best, known for their skills, their accomplishments, and, of course, their friendship with Ben Tennyson. Helen Wheels, a Kineceleran, or XLR-8, as Ben would call it. Manny Armstrong, a Tetramand, or 4 Arms. Alan Albright, a Pyronite, or Heat Blast. Cooper Daniels, a Technopath, is able to control and manipulate machinery and has enhanced strength and a genius-level IQ. Last was Jimmy Jones. While not an official plumber, his information gathering and organizational skills were beyond impressive. He practically ran every aspect of the day-to-day operations of the base. Though these 5 were the youngest of the plumbers, they had been trained by both Max and Ben Tennyson. They knew what they were doing and had proven that they had the right stuff over and over again. Now, they were overseeing the initiation of the 4 newest plumbers, the Ultimen. After arriving in their universe, the 4 superheroes had quickly been brought up to speed about how things worked. After attending Plumber Academy, they'd been deployed to Earth and were being assigned their rooms and standard plumber armor. The former helpers had been shocked when Verdona had shown up and announced that Ben was actually alive. They had been devastated when they heard about what happened to the Tennyson family, as well as Kevin and Julie. They had been deployed to an emergency several light years away and had been unable to help. To find out that Ben was still alive. When the Ultimen showed up and told them that they'd actually met Ben, they'd been bombarded with questions. Unfortunately, they hadn't known Ben that well. In fact, they hadn't even known that he was human until they arrived at the plumber base. All they could tell them was information on their own universe. "Still can't believe that Ben's living in a world full of superheroes," muttered Manny. "Manny, you've been saying that for months," scolded Helen. "Would you let it go?" "He could have at least sent a message, or something," offered Alan, "anything to let us know that he was still alive." "I can understand why," said Jimmy from behind them. "Think about all the times he spent time with us. Nearly every time, Gwen and Kevin were with him. Do you really think that he wanted to be reminded of them?" The 3 aliens looked down at their feet. While they had initially been furious that Ben had left them to think he was dead, his reasons for staying in another universe made sense. "I guess not," said Manny. "Don't worry about Ben." The plumbers turned to see Wind Dragon, the other Ultiman behind him. "From what I saw of him, he's been doing well." "Indeed he has." All whirled around to see a man with black hair and a white lab coat. "Professor Paradox," exclaimed Jimmy. The time-traveling hero had visited the plumbers on occasion, requesting their help in stopping anomalies in the time stream every once in a while. The professor gave a smile. "Yes, anyway, Ben has been doing well for himself. He's already saved his new universe once, and I dare say he'll." Paradox frowned and put a hand to his head. "Professor?" asked a concerned shifter. She had met Paradox a couple of times and, despite his eccentricity, found him a likable person. "Are you all right?" Paradox looked up at them. "I'm fine, however, I must be going. Cheerio, and all that." In a flash of blue light, Paradox vanished. "What was that about?" asked Cooper. "I don't know," said Jimmy, "but it can't be good." Watchtower Shayera's return to the Justice League had left most members in one of 2 camps. Some didn't think she could be trusted, while others were at least willing to give her a chance. Ben, on the other hand, firmly believed that he could trust the Thanagarian with his life. Seeing Ben, a trusted leaguer, put his faith in Shayera had actually brought other members to the second camp. Some, however, wouldn't forgive her for her betrayal. One of those was Wonder Woman, who was currently glaring at her as she walked to her table in the cafeteria. Diana's carrying a grudge," commented Green Lantern, where he, Batman and Ben were eating. "She'll get over it," said Batman. "Hopefully," added Ben. He'd learned about the Amazon culture, and betrayal of any sort was a crime of the highest order. "How about you, Lantern? Carrying anything?" "What, with Shayera?" Lantern smiled. "It's been a long time since we were together. We've decided to give each other our space for a while." Both Ben and Batman looked at him skeptically. "I'm very happy," said Lantern. Said Batman, clearly not believing him. "Anyway," said Lantern, trying to change the subject, "why is it that we always talk about either Ben's love life or mine?" "More like your lack of one," commented Ben. Lantern shot him a look, then asked Batman, "What's going on between you and Diana?" Most of the senior leaguers enjoyed implying that there was something going on between the princess and the Dark Knight, Ben included, though he did think that they were a good match. "There's nothing going on between us," said Batman. Ben rolled his eyes, while Lantern said, "I don't have time to pursue a relationship," said Batman. "My work is too important. Diana's a remarkable woman, she's a trusted friend, she's..." He noticed the looks the other two heroes were giving him. "Standing right behind me, isn't she?" "Don't let that stop you," said Wonder Woman as she put a hand on Batman's shoulder. "Keep digging. Intruder alert." The four heroes stood up at the sound of the automated alert. "Dormitory deck. Intruder alert. Dormitory deck." They rushed to the deck in question, with Ben turning into Swampfire, to find a man in a blue bodysuit, goggles and a silver belt stealing one of Batman's spare utility belts. "Freeze!" yelled Swampfire, a ball of flame appearing in his hand. "Why, you weren't supposed to see me," said the man in a terrified voice. He pressed a button on his belt and jumped into a white, swirling hole that appeared behind him. The four heroes quickly followed but began to spin around until Green Lantern created a bubble around them with his ring. They shielded their eyes as the end of the tunnel became very bright. Elkhorn, Oklahoma. When the four exited the tunnel, they weren't in the watchtower anymore. In fact, they had no idea where they were. All around them was dust, mesas, and tumbleweeds. Swampfire turned back into Ben and swayed on his feet. "Everyone okay?" asked Green Lantern. "I think I left my stomach back on the watchtower," moaned Ben. "Where are we?" asked Wonder Woman. Before anyone could answer, they heard the sound of guns being cocked. The four heroes turned to see four men on horseback, each aiming a pistol at them. "Where?" said Batman. "I think the real question is when." The men hopped off their horses and approached them. "I have to confess," said one, "you're about the most colorfully attired folk I've ever bushwhacked." "You circus folk?" "Not exactly," said Wonder Woman. The guy shrugged. "I don't care what you are, so long as you pay the toll." "Toll?" asked Ben. "Welcome to Elkhorn, Oklahoma, folks," the man said, tipping his hat. "This here's Tobias Manning territory." He held out his hand, expecting his toll. "You want tribute?" asked Wonder Woman, incredulous. "Money?" "Well, I ain't particular," he said, his eyes drifting to her hip. "That fancy gold chain will do just fine." Then he cupped her chin in his hand. "Unless there's something else you want to give me?" "Bad move, dude," thought Ben with a smirk. Wonder Woman heaved the man over her head and sent him flying. One of the others aimed his gun, but Ben knocked it aside and slammed his fist into the man's jaw. Just because he could turn into super-powered aliens didn't mean that he didn't know how to fight on his own. The other two fired their guns, but Wonder Woman deflected the shots with her bracelets. "Those are the biggest, slowest bullets I've ever seen," she commented. "You're letting them go?" asked Batman, as the two tried to run. "Oh, no way." Wonder Woman caught the fleeing men with her lasso. She knocked the men out, while Batman and Green Lantern brought the horses over. "I was afraid of this," said Batman as he pulled a newspaper from one of the saddles, the Elkhorn Gazette. "It's either an amazing forgery or it's less than a month old." So? Asked Wonder Woman. Look at the date, said Batman, June, 1879. Have I mentioned how much I hate time travel? Asked Green Lantern. Fantastic, said Ben, looking around, and no Professor Paradox to get us out of here. Do you think that clockwork could get us back? Asked Wonder Woman. Ben shook his head. Doubt it. I only know how to do a few things as clockwork, and actually moving through time isn't one of them. Wonder Woman sighed. Then if we don't find our sneak thief, we're stuck here. Let's head for the nearest town, suggested Lantern, and see if we can find him. We can't go anywhere dressed like this, said Batman, gesturing to their costumes. Ben was wearing his usual attire, but jeans, a green jacket and a black t-shirt wouldn't blend into 1879 America any more than Batman's costume. No, agreed Wonder Woman, as she looked at the men she'd knocked out, we can't. After a brief amount of time changing, the Leaguers were now wearing the men's clothes. Fortunately, they were all relatively close in size, even Ben, who was the shortest of the heroes present. However, the clothes were filthy, so Ben used clockwork to restore them to good condition. Ben was wearing a dark green, knee-length jacket, dark blue hat and pants, and a black button-up shirt with brown boots. Diana was wearing blue pants, a white shirt and hat, and a brown jacket with brown boots. Bruce was wearing a long, black coat and hat. His other attire was all gray. John, not wanting to put on the smelly clothes, had simply made new ones with his ring. These shoes are killing me, complained Diana. You fight crime wearing high heels, Ben pointed out. High heels that fit. Everyone should probably take one of these, said John, handing out holsters and pistols. We probably won't be bothered if people see we're armed. Or it'll start a gunfight, muttered Ben, even as he gingerly took the gun. He'd only used the occasional energy weapon, never a gun that fired bullets. Your empty holsters aren't going to scare anyone, John said to Bruce. Are you sure you don't want one? Positive, Bruce pointed to his utility belt, then hopped onto a horse. Let's ride. The other Leaguers followed suit, and their horses took off. It took about an hour, but they made it into town. They had no idea where to look, so they picked a saloon. It seemed cliché, but it was the only idea they had. They entered the saloon and sat at a table in the corner. They received passing glances, but attention returned to the center of the room, where a card game was going on. My pappy always said, commented one of the players, a man with a flower on his brown vest and a gray hat on his head, faint of heart never filled a flush. It ain't your pappy's money, said another man, as he put his cards down. I fold. That leaves you and me, said a man with a thin mustache and a brown coat. What are you holding, Mr. Lash? It'll cost you another 500 to find out, said Lash, pushing forward a pile of chips. The other man smiled, pushed his own chips forward and laid his cards on the table. Call, 4 kings and an ace. Lash rubbed his chin. Well now, that's a mite perplexing, he said as he put his own cards down, seeing as how I've got 4 aces and a king. He started to pull the chips towards himself, but the other man stood up. Well, I've got the gun. He pulled out a strange, 7-barreled weapon. Lash put his hands up, then a small pistol shot into his open palm. Lot of that going around, it seems. The two men stared each other down before Lash spoke again. Seems like a waste of a good-sized pot. How about we split it and both walk away? In response, the barrels of the other man's gun extended on spider-like limbs and surrounded Lash. How about I take it all? Lash's eyes widened in surprise, but otherwise he kept his cool. Sounds fair, the way you explain it, he said as he put his gun down. That technology's from the future. Diana hissed as she started to get up while Ben was reaching for the Ultimatrix. Wait, whispered Bruce, we don't know how things work here yet. Diana and Ben looked at each other but sat back down. Two men grabbed Lash by the arms, while the other man's gun went back to normal. Hang him at dawn. Don't I get a trial? Demanded Lash. Sure. The man leaned in close. You're guilty. My town, my rules. Wait a minute, cried Lash, as he was being dragged off. Can't we talk about this? How about another hand? Double or nothing. But it was too late, he was dragged off. I think we know how things work here now, commented John. We have to help that man, said Diana. That's not what we're here for, said Bruce. Someone's tampering with history, the stakes are much bigger than the life of one card shark. Diana stared at him, then got up. Then it's settled. We'll break him out after sundown. As she walked up, Ben smirked at Bruce, who hadn't responded. What? He asked. WKSSSH, said Ben, making a whipping motion with his hand, while John chuckled. Later that night, at the jail, Lash was trying to force the bars on his window open, but with no success. That's not going to work. I tried already. Lash turned to the occupant of the cell next to his, a small man with a gray beard. Yeah, those bars are cheap pig iron, continued the man, but they're plenty strong enough to hold, at least until morning, when they come to hang you. Do you mind? Asked an annoyed Lash. I'm trying to plan an escape over here. How's it coming so far? Asked the other man. I'm working on it. A clang against the bars to Lash's cell made both men look up. Quiet down in there, barked the guard. That's just what I was telling him, said Lash, pointing at the other man. Oh. Oh. All three men turned to see a pale, one-eyed ghost flying towards the guard, hands held out, as if to steal his soul. Ghost Freak flew up to the guard, who was so scared that he couldn't move. Boo! Ah! The guard turned and ran right into the wall and knocked himself out. Ghost Freak would have smiled if he had a mouth, so he settled for chuckling, then slapping the Ultimatrix dial. The men in the cells covered their eyes from the green flash before looking at Ben. How'd you do that? Asked Lash. Ben shrugged. A magician never reveals his secrets. Lash smiled. Fair enough. The other heroes came in. I'll get the door, said John, his ring making a key, until Diana simply ripped the door off its hinges. Or you could do that. Diana handed Lash his holster and gun, while Bruce told him, I'd get out of town if I were you. I'd like to, said Lash, but my pappy always said, a man who sticks his head in the sand makes a pretty good target. I've got business to conclude before I leave. He twirled his gun, then reholstered it, before holding out his hand to Diana. Bartholomew Aloysius Lash. Friends call me Bat Lash. Diana shook his hand, while John made the introductions. I'm John, these are my friends Diana, Ben and... He hesitated when he reached Bruce, who never told anyone who he was while he was working. Bruce. Finished the detective. We're lawmen, continued John, looking to bring a criminal to justice. You may have seen him, said Ben. He's got amazing machines. We think the man who put you in here works for him. Not exactly. The five turned to see the other man, and the heroes recognized the voice. It was the time traveler. You're... began John. David Clinton, said the man, inventor of the chronosuit, at your disposal. You tried to steal Batman's utility belt, Diana stated. And you chased me, said David, but time tunnels are somewhat counterintuitive. Even though you were only seconds behind me, I arrived here nearly 6 months before you did. Where's your time travel device? Asked Bruce. Now there's a story. David hung his head. As soon as I got here, I was robbed. By Tobias Manning, guessed Ben. Yes, he did. He took my suit and used it to take over this town. David began to pace. He keeps taking trips to the future and coming back with stolen technology. He keeps me here to teach him how to use the stuff that he can't work out for himself. Which I'd suspect is most of it, commented Lash, what with him being so mule stupid and all. It's been horrible in here, said a begging David, humiliating. I just want to go home, I'll gladly accept my punishment if you help me get back. How did Tobias take over a whole town with a time machine? Asked John. With future tech, of course, said David, like it was obvious. Like his surveillance cameras, said Bruce, pointing up. Sure enough, a camera was pointing right at them. We need to go. Now. You're with us, said Diana, ripping open the doors of David's cell. Now that's a healthy gal, commented Lash as they made their way out. They were only saved from getting killed by gunfire because John was able to bring up a shield in time. Bullets pinged off. They were safe, for the moment. I've got their positions, said John. I'm gonna take them down. Don't hurt anyone, warned Diana, we could accidentally change history. Little late for that, don't you think? Asked Ben. Bruce heard a noise behind him and turned to see the prison guard, who'd regained consciousness. The man reached for his gun. Go ahead, said Bruce as he reached for his utility belt, give me an excuse. The guard could see that Bruce didn't have a gun, so he went for his own. By the time his hand wrapped around the grip, Bruce had ripped it out of his hand and knocked him out. Now that's just showing off, commented Ben. Outside, the gunfire was starting to lessen. Something's happening out there, said John. Something's happening, all right, said a very happy Lash. The cavalry's arrived. After a few more gunshots rang out, everything was silent. The group emerged from the jail to see a rather strange trio. One was a Native American, and he was by far the most normal. There was a man dressed in black and red, wearing a red mask and had a whip at his side. The last was a massive man that wore a gray shirt and wide-brimmed hat, which only partially concealed a large, distorted eye and torn mouth. Who are you people? Asked John. Sheriff Ohiesa Smith. The Native American said. El Diablo, said the masked man with a Spanish accent, ever at the service of justice. Jonah Hex, said the disfigured man, don't have a lot of time for John. In these parts, there's an abundance of bad men who need set straight. To punctuate his statement, Hex loaded a pair of shells into his shotgun. Hex then looked the heroes up and down. If you all are working for Tobias, there's gonna be difficulty. Easy, Jonah, said Lash, they're with me. They helped me out of a spot while I was here incognito, trying to find out more about Tobias. What have you learned? Asked Smith. Among other moral failings, said Lash, the man cheats at poker. Yeah, I coulda told you that, said Hex, then spat off to the side. Okay, I'm a little lost. Ben stepped forward. Someone want to fill us in on the whole story? I've lived in Elkhorn since the war, said Smith, and I've been sheriff most of that time. This here's a mining town, booming too. Folks sometimes get a bit rowdy on payday, but still, it's a good place to live. There's never been any mischief I couldn't handle, that is, until about 6 months ago. Tobias Manning's always been trouble, I've run him out of town before. Well, he came back, and this time he had, I don't know, magic powers. There's no such thing as magic, my friend, said El Diablo, it was some sort of trickery. Dr. Fate and Zatanna might have something to say about that, thought Ben. Smith continued, anger in his voice. Well, he tricked me nearly to death. Then he beat me good and ran me out of town like a stray dog. He took over the town and runs it like his own personal kingdom. He treats the townspeople like slaves, that's unacceptable to me. The sheriff went looking for men to help take Tobias down, added Diablo, and he found us. And what's your stake in this? Asked Hex. We're lawmen, too, said John. From back east? Asked Hex. Sure, lied Bruce. We came here to bring this man to justice, explained Diana, pointing to David. Indirectly, he's the source of your trouble too. Tobias stole a dangerous weapon from him, added Ben, and we need to take it back. Since we want the same thing, maybe we should work together. I ain't about to turn down help, said Smith. What's the plan? Asked John. Plan? Snorted Hex. We put him in the ground. The 4 natives to the timeline walked to their horses. The Leaguers, plus David, looked at each other for a moment, then followed. The 9 of them got onto their horses and rode off. After a while, Hex turned to Ben, noticing the Ultimatrix. "Fancy wristwatch you got there, son. I reckon you folks are time travelers." Ben gave a nervous smile. "Now, where would you get a crazy idea like that?" "Experience," replied Hex easily. "I've had an interesting life." "We're getting close," said Smith. "I want to warn you, there's some downright unusual activity going on hereabouts. Don't let it throw you." "Don't worry," said John, "we've got a lot of experience dealing with unusual." He trailed off as a pair of mechanical pterodactyls, with gun-toting riders, flew in close. "I'm sorry, you were saying?" "Ben, Diana," Bruce barked, "take care of them." "Got it." Ben jumped off his horse and slammed down on the Ultimatrix. "Chromastone." "What the?" said Lash. Then his jaw dropped as both Chromastone and Diana flew into the air. Both riders fired energy weapons, but Diana deflected shots with her bracelets, while Chromastone simply absorbed them. Diana then ripped the wing off one of the robots, while Chromastone fired a blast of energy that disabled the other. Both riders deployed jetpacks and flew off. "Why would they need robot dinosaurs if they had jetpacks?" asked Diana as they flew back down to their horses. "For the coolness factor," suggested Chromastone, before he turned back into Ben and hopped onto his horse. Everyone else simply rolled their eyes. When they reached Tobias' camp, they took cover behind some stones while Smith took a look at the defenses. He didn't have a lot of time, however, because he was detected by the guards, robots dressed in cowboy attire. Several dozen more robots ran out, firing automatic and energy weapons. "Now might be a good time to turn into that purple rock man," said Lash to Ben as the group took cover. Ben shook his head. "I've got someone else in mind." He activated the Ultimatrix and searched until he found the alien he wanted, then slammed the dial. Cannon bolt. The new alien was large and mostly white, with yellow plates on his back, head and limbs. Cannon bolt then rolled up into a ball and sped down into the mass of robots, shots deflecting off of his shell, and sent many of them flying. The rest of the group, save for David, charged in, easily laying waste to the robot soldiers. Occasionally, they met up with one of Tobias' lieutenants, and each one had something very out of place with the Old West. One rode a velociraptor, another drove a tank, and 3 were inside of giant robots, but the team defeated them all. All that was left was their leader. "Tobias," roared Smith. "If it isn't Pow Wow Smith." Smith turned to see Tobias come out of a shed. "Wasn't expecting to see your sorry hide again." "I've told you before about calling me that," growled Smith. "It isn't gonna happen again." "No," agreed Tobias, as he extended the barrels of his gun again, "I expect this is gonna be the last time. Go for your gun, Chief, so I can ventilate you proper." Behind Smith, the rest of the heroes stepped forward, and Cannonbolt turned into Diamond Head. "7 guns, 7 of us," said Bruce, drawing a batarang. "Nobody misses." A moment later, a batarang, 2 bullets, an energy ring blast, a whip, a bladed tiara and a shard of diamond reduced Tobias' weapon into scrap. "My guns," shouted Tobias. "You and me, partner," said Smith, "right now." Tobias smirked. "Another day, lawman." He ran back into the shed and emerged from a skylight on the back of a winged, robotic horse. "I can't catch him in the air," raged Smith. "You can with help." Diamond Head slapped the Ultimatrix dial. "Jet Ray." Jet Ray picked Smith up by the shoulders with his feet and pursued, the fast alien quickly catching up to the robot. He tossed Smith through the air. The sheriff landed on the back of the horse and punched his enemy. Without anyone to control it, the robot crashed into the ground. Both men were flung clear of the crash and struggled to their feet. "Have it your way," said Tobias, as he pulled out a knife. "Let's finish this." While Tobias might have acted threatening, he wasn't a threat when it came down to a fair fight. Smith beat the stuffing out of him, finally knocking him out with one final uppercut. As the rest of the group caught up to him, he pulled off the chronobelt that Tobias was wearing. "This what you're looking for?" After a short rest, the group gathered up all of the technology that Tobias had hoarded, and Green Lantern, now in his uniform along with the other Leaguers, sent it into the sun with his ring. "Near as my ring can tell," he said, "that's everything that shouldn't be here." "Shoot," said Lash, "I wanted one of them fancy ray guns." "Ain't dependable," Hex warned him, "they jam." "I don't suppose you could keep all this a secret?" Ben asked Smith. The sheriff smiled. "Who would believe us?" A short distance away, Batman and David were working on the chronobelt. "Oh, you forgot to reset the compensator," David said, reaching for the belt. "Here, let me." He pressed a button, and Batman was hit by a wave of energy and collapsed. David snatched up the belt and created another time tunnel, just as the other Leaguers ran to their fallen friend. "Or maybe I'm lying." Laughing maniacally, he jumped into the tunnel, followed closely by the 4 superheroes. The others tried to go after them, but the time tunnel vanished. "Here we go again," thought Ben, as they headed to Hunuan. Neo-Gotham, 50 years past present day. The 4 Leaguers flew out of the time tunnel and rose unsteadily to their feet. "We've been expecting you." The heroes looked up to see a pack of strange people that looked like sci-fi clowns walking towards them. The looks on their faces clearly showed that they weren't friendly. Before the clowns got closer, a bolt of purple lightning cut a furrow into the ground, and 3 people showed up. "But I don't think you were expecting us." The speaker, an older African-American man with gray dreadlocks and a purple coat, landed on the ground next to a man in a black suit with pointed ears and a red bat symbol on his chest. Next to him was another man, wearing silver armor and having black wings. Green Lantern walked up to the man with dreadlocks. "Static?" he asked in disbelief. The winged man stared right back at Lantern. "Dad?" Ben sighed. "Looks like it's gonna be one of those days." Chapter 14, The Once and Future Thing, Part 2. Neo-Gotham, 50 years in the future. It had been one of those days for Ben Tennyson. First he, Batman, Green Lantern and Wonder Woman had followed a time-traveling thief back into the Old West, where they teamed up with heroes from that era to help stop a criminal who'd been using future tech. Then, when they thought they were going home, the thief, David Clinton, had tricked them and escaped into another time. The heroes had followed, and now they were in an unfamiliar timeline, being attacked by clowns. All in all, Ben had been happier. Things could have been worse, however. They'd gotten aid from other heroes, one of whom was a much older version of Static, a reserve member of the Justice League in their time. The man in the black suit and the other with black wings, however, were a mystery. "We need to get out of here," said the man in black. "Leaving so soon?" asked one of the clowns, a guy wearing black and orange who looked like he'd been stitched together out of corpses. "You didn't even take any party favors." With that, he threw a pumpkin into the air, which began depositing small but very powerful explosives on the heroes. Green Lantern threw up a shield, but already it was beginning to weaken. "That's not gonna hold," warned the winged man. Sure enough, the shield failed, and the heroes split up to deal with their opponents. Wonder Woman faced off against a fat clown in a pink shirt and mask, his lower body replaced by a large ball. He drew a double-bladed energy sword and swung. Wonder Woman blocked it with her bracelets but was thrown into bouts of unbelievable agony. Green Lantern, the man in black, fought identical twin sisters, wearing clown makeup and wielding energy whips. "Look, DD," said one, another Green Lantern. "He's much cuter than the last one we killed," said the other. "Don't you agree, DD?" The heroes fought them off as well as they could, but every time they hit one of the twins, they divided into 2 more. If they didn't end the battle soon, they'd be facing an army. The winged man fought a true freak. He looked like a humanoid hyena, only with mechanical arms. The battle wasn't going well for the winged hero. The hyena was too fast and too strong. Ben, now transformed into Big Chill, was fighting a big, red-garbed clown with a hammer for an arm alongside Static. Ben had met the hero in his own timeline. He was a pretty good kid, if a little cocky at times, but Ben had been like that himself, so he wasn't one to judge. Besides, he, Static, and his best friend Gear had become good friends. "So, Static," said Big Chill as he phased through the clown's attack, "what's new?" "Oh, you know, the usual," said Static, as he used his electromagnetic powers to slam a dumpster into the clown, stopping bad guys, saving the world, meeting dead people, the usual. Just a normal day at the office, then." "Would you two hold still so I can pound you?" roared the clown. "Now, why would I do that?" asked Big Chill as he sent a breath of frost at the clown. He was only frozen for a second before he broke free. Batman was fighting the stitched-up man and was doing a fairly good job of avoiding his blows, but it was only a matter of time before one of the freak's hands, which had turned into buzzsaws, hit him. "We need to get out of here," said the man in black. "What we need is reinforcements," said Static. "Hey, Ultiman, where are you?" Suddenly, a blur struck the ground in front of the hyena, and a gloved fist sent the freak flying into the air. When the smoke from the impact cleared, Big Chill could see who the fist belonged to. It was a man in his mid-30s and a few inches taller than Ben, wearing a black t-shirt, olive pants and combat boots. He had black, fingerless gloves and a gauntlet on his left wrist that reminded him of the Ultimatrix, but it was blue in color, and instead of the normal dial, a button with an S shield stood out. The man smiled as he ran his hand through his blonde hair. "Sorry I'm late," the man said sheepishly, "I was cutting off some reinforcements." "Whatever, man," said Static, "just give us some cover." "Right." In the man's hand appeared a fireball, which he hurled at the now regrouped clowns. They fell back from the now raging inferno, giving the heroes some breathing room. "Now we need to fall back," the man in black repeated. "No way," said Wonder Woman. "We're the Justice League, we don't back down from a fight." "Besides," added Big Chill, "we were winning." The blonde-haired man, Ultiman, shook his head. "Only for now, once their backup arrives, we'll be toast." "The new guys are right," said Green Lantern. "Static, give us a light show." Static focused his power and released a blinding flash of electricity. When the clowns uncovered their eyes and got through the flames, their quarry had vanished. The League members followed their new allies down a dark, polluted tunnel. The time travelers were more than a little shocked to see historical buildings littering the streets, such as the Sphinx and the Colosseum, but the others got them to get moving again. "Where are we headed?" asked Wonder Woman. "Teleporter coordinates for the watchtower?" "Not exactly," said the man in black. After an hour of walking, flying and doubling back to make sure they weren't followed, the group arrived at an old, run-down high school. "Geez," commented Big Chill, "my parents' garage was a better secret base than this." Only Ultiman laughed. "I missed that." "Huh?" Ultiman shook his head. "I'll tell you later." They entered the school, the inside just as littered as everything else they'd seen of the city. Ben, now back in his human form to allow the Ultimatrix to recharge, had seen better-looking war zones. "This is Justice League HQ?" asked Batman. "For now," replied Static, as he turned on a computer. "We're all that's left of the League." Ben was shocked. The Justice League, which had numbered close to 6 members, had been reduced to only 4 people? What had happened to everyone else? What had happened to Flash, Zatanna, and Steel? What had happened to Kara? "You've traveled about 50 years into your future," said the man in black, "and by the way, I'm the new Batman. Welcome to Neo Gotham. Then I'm calling you Neo Batman, just to clear up any confusion," replied Ben, after getting over his shock. Neo Batman glared at him. Lantern walked up to Static. "Last time I saw you, you were too young to drive. You look good for a man your age." "The miracles of modern medicine," said Static, 65 is the new 30. "What happened to the watchtower?" asked Batman. Gone, said Neo-Batman sadly. We lost a lot of good people that day. You mean Superman, John, and all the others? Asked Wonder Woman. Yeah, said the Winged Man, taking off his silver helmet and looking at them, you guys too. And the Batcave? Asked Batman. This is all we have left, said an old but familiar voice as an elderly man stepped from the shadows, supported by a cane. Deal with it. The time travelers were shocked. It looked like him, but it couldn't possibly be. Batman walked up to the old man. Surprised to see me? Asked the old man. A little, admitted Batman, but I'm more surprised to see I've lived for so long. Batman, Bruce Wayne, said Neo-Batman. Bruce Wayne, Batman, or have you met? Not now. Both Bruce Waynes barked. Great, moaned Neo-Batman, what did they used to call it? Stereo? This is a little weird for everybody, said the Winged Man, holding out his hand to Lantern. I'm War Hawk, Rex Stewart. Ben wasn't as surprised as he should have been. He could tell that John and Shayera had feelings for each other, so why wouldn't they have a kid somewhere down the line? Your mother, said Lantern slowly, even as he shook War Hawk's hand. Who is she? Kind of obvious, don't you think? Asked War Hawk, gesturing to his wings. And I'm Ultiman, said the blonde man, holding out his hand to Ben. Kenneth Max Tennyson. Okay, now Ben was shocked. Sure, Paradox had once told him that he had a son, but that had been an alternate timeline. He had a son in this universe? Kara hadn't even decided when she was going to permanently move in, and suddenly he had a son? Was his mother Kara? Feeling a little numb, Ben shook his future son's hand. And before you ask who my mom is, it's Kara, isn't it? Asked Ben. He may have been surprised, but he also didn't see himself starting a family with anyone else. Yep. Ultiman grinned, then wrapped his father in a hug. It's good to see you again, Dad. Ken. Ben gasped, Sorry. As the son released the father, the two stared at each other. Then Ben fainted. Ben. Wonder Woman rushed to his side. Is he okay? Don't worry about it, said Static dismissively. He did the same thing when Kara told him she was pregnant. He'll be fine in a minute. Sure enough, Ben groggily got back up and stared at his son. So, you're half Kryptonian? Ken said, although I don't have full-strength Kryptonian powers, I did inherit a few things from the Ultimatrix. By the way, it's putting a little alien DNA into you, nothing to worry about though, just giving you a heads up. That's why you have heat blast firepower. Yep, plus intangibility, energy absorption, lightning powers and this. A green tendril of energy emerged from his hand and dusted off Ben's jacket. With those and the Kryptonian abilities that I inherited, I have 10 powers. I used to go by Ken 10 for a while. Named myself Ultiman after you, well. Don't worry about it. Besides, you used mana. Ben grinned. You inherited the spark of the Anodites. Grandma Verdona's gonna flip when she finds out. Would you two stop grinning like idiots? Asked War Hawk sternly, before turning to Static. And why do you think that this is anything to joke about? Because we already won, said Static. Think about it, if old Bruce is here, that means he already lived through this as Batman, and the only way for Ken to be here is if Ben survived too. Flawless logic, said Bruce, except that I have no memory of going to the future and meeting my older self, or of anything else that's going on today. Those historical buildings we saw earlier, said Batman, the timelines become polluted. So polluted that time itself is becoming fluid. Mused Ben. He looked up to see the others staring at him, even Ken. What? I've had enough experience with time travel to know when things are getting bad. Very astute, Ben. The heroes turned to face the source of the new voice, most charging up powers or drawing weapons, before. Wait, shouted Ben, putting himself between the others and Professor Paradox. He's a friend. He turned to the Time Walker. I had a feeling you'd show up eventually, paradox. The professor smiled. I'd say I've arrived right on time. Both Ben and Ken groaned at the time pun as Paradox held out a paper bag. Now then, before we compare notes, would anyone like a gumball? On board the Titanic, Neo-Gotham David Clinton, now known as Kronos, walked into a dining room aboard the Titanic, holding the hand of his wife, Enid. Enid, I must say that I am vexed. Yes, vexed is precisely the word. Why, you mustn't let yourself get upset, David, said a nervous Enid. Before he'd become a time-traveling conqueror, David Clinton had been weak and easy for her to boss around. Now, it was her turn to be scared of him. You're right, dear, Kronos said, before looking at the clowns, a gang known as the Jokers, whom he'd sent to kill the League, but here we are. Now, look at it from my point of view. I go to the trouble of taking over the whole city, just so I can have a place to keep my collection. And it's a beautiful collection, David, added Enid, hoping that her husband would forget that she'd called his collection a worthless pile of trash. I was gonna say the same thing, boss, said the fat joker, called Chucko. For instance, this is a really nice boat, big. The other jokers nodded, but Kronos leaned in with a glare. Don't patronize me, Chucko, and especially don't interrupt me. I'm sorry. Sorry, what? The jokers looked at each other. They hated doing this. Everybody? Sorry, Lord Kronos, the clowns said in unison. It doesn't seem right. Kronos said as he paced, I go to the future, I give you the technology that gives you all your powers, and I let you run amok in my city in return for the occasional security job, and what do you do in return? The twins looked at each other. They both said. That was rhetorical, shouted Kronos. The point is, I gave you an easy job, take care of Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern and Ben 10, it should have been 15 minutes of work. But the Justice League showed up. Protested the big one, named Bunk. They got in our way. Yes, they did, agreed Kronos, and the question arises, who told them where and when the four would show up? I mean, I told you. And I only know because I'm the undisputed master of space and time. I'll look into it, boss, said Chucko confidently. I'll find out where the leak was. No, don't trouble yourself, Chucko, Kronos said sadistically as he leaned in to whisper in the clown's ear, I already know. He touched the button on his belt, and an image of the past appeared before them all. It showed Neo-Batman handing a large sum of money to someone. Someone's getting a payoff, said Kronos. Yes, he is. The image soon showed who was getting paid. It was Chucko himself. The other jokers stepped away from their soon-to-be dead comrade. Chucko, 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 said Kronos in a mock disapproving tone, you've been a very bad clown. Then Kronos opened another time tunnel, grabbed Chucko, and hauled him inside. When they emerged, they were in the late Cretaceous period. Kronos pushed the clown forward. Enjoy your stay. Then Kronos returned to the future. Chucko looked around and saw a T-Rex charging at him. He activated his energy sword. You think I'm scared, yelled the clown. I'll be running this dump in a few ye. He looked up and saw a very large asteroid heading towards the Earth. Oh, phooey. As Kronos stepped out of the time tunnel, he looked at the very frightened clowns. Do you know what killed dinosaurs? He asked, getting a chorus of silently shaking heads. Well, Chucko does, and unless you want to find out firsthand, you'll go finish off the Justice League. Skedaddle. Time is money. The jokers ran off, and Kronos sat down on the couch, next to his wife. Actually, time is the non-spatial continuum in which events occur linearly, usually in the direction of increased entropy, but the clown seemed to relate better to the money thing. He pulled his wife into a non-reciprocated embrace. Oh, Enid, look at what I've done, and you said I'd never amount to anything. I guess I showed you. Enid gave a weak smile as her husband let out a mad cackle and then continued. Now, I've taken over all of Gotham, which gives me plenty of space to store my antiques, did you notice that I took that stuff out of the garage? You can park there now, if you like. Thank you, David. Enid seemed to remember something. David, didn't you once say that it was dangerous to take important things from the past, that it could damage time somehow? David's eyes narrowed. Don't you think I can handle it? Oh, of course I do. Enid got up and began giving her husband a massage. Dear? Do you know what would make me happy? If you let my mother out of the thing, like you promised. We'll see. Kronos said, in a tone that meant no. Rub my neck. Enid did so, but she continued to talk. It's just that, it seems cruel to keep her there so long. Your mother also said that I'd never amount to anything, growled Kronos, and you agreed with her. He got up, his whole body shaking with insane rage. Whatever I do, whatever I accomplish, it will never be enough for you, will it? I just wanted you to love me. I'm sick of this and I'm sick of you. Wait, baby, please, begged Enid. Isn't there anything I can do to make this right? I sincerely doubt it. Kronos marched to the captain's quarters without another word. He sat down and brooded. Marriage to the wrong person can be difficult, can it not? Kronos turned to see a man in a white lab coat on the other side of the room, looking at him in disapproval. Trust me, I've seen enough relationships over the millennia to know. Who are you? Demanded Kronos, reaching for his time belt. No need for violence, I simply wish to talk, one time traveler to another. The man gave a disarming smile. I am Professor Paradox, and I know that you are David Clinton, though I believe that you go by Kronos now, correct? Though he was losing his grip on sanity, Kronos was intrigued by this other time traveler. What do you want? If it's antiques you're after, I'll have you know that these are all mine. Paradox shook his head. I have no need for trinkets such as these, or any belongings, for that matter. I do have a warning, however. A warning? About what? Paradox looked at him sternly. If you do not surrender to the League immediately, everything will be gone. Your collection, your troops, your wife, everything. All of time will unravel, all of reality, the multiverse itself, will cease to be. Kronos laughed. That's it? A pathetic attempt to make me give up. Don't be ridiculous. Get out of my... But Paradox had already vanished, leaving Kronos to do nothing but fume. Meanwhile, at Justice League HQ, after an hour of regaling the future heroes with what happened in the Old West, everyone was brought up to speed. Paradox confirmed that every piece of future tech that Tobias Manning had stolen had indeed been destroyed. Batman hadn't said much, leaving the storytelling to the others while he worked on something at the computer. Ben, meanwhile, was trying his best not to learn too much about his future. Paradox had warned him many times over the years about the dangers of knowing what could happen. Still, he was amazed. While he and Kara loved each other very much, he hadn't known if they'd start a family. After all, they'd only been dating for 10 months. He hadn't even known if it was possible to have a child with a Kryptonian, but now proof, in the form of Kenneth Max Tennyson, was right in front of him. He returned his attention to the computer, which showed a picture of David, now calling himself Kronos, wearing a ridiculous green and white jumpsuit with an hourglass on his chest. We still don't know much about him, said Neo-Batman, but obviously, he's a time-traveling warlord. He's littered the streets with buildings he's stolen from other timelines. Oh, trust me, dude, he isn't a warlord. Ben smirked as he spoke. He was a collector of random stuff when we first met him. He's causing severe damage to the space-time continuum, said Paradox, and if something is not done soon, we will see the destruction of the multiverse and the end of reality itself. So, it's a Gregor bad? Asked Ben. No, it's much worse, said Paradox. While a Gregor wanted to reshape reality in his own image, this is simple annihilation, the end of everything that ever was, is, and will be. Oh. Ben glanced at the others, who looked shocked, then shrugged. Pretty bad, then. I've got something that might prevent that. Everyone turned to Batman, while Paradox had a slight smile on his face. While we were in the Old West, I got a good look at his time belt. He typed a few more keys on the computer, then pulled out a small disk. I've written a program that should disable it. If we can get close enough to upload it, said Warhawk. If we can get our hands on the belt, said Wonder Woman, maybe we can stop any of this from happening in the first place. Then, to the others' shock, Wonder Woman began to disappear. We could even undo the deaths of. She never finished her sentence, she vanished entirely. Diana! Yelled Batman, stretching out his hand to grab her, but she was already gone. For a moment, all the others could do was stare in horror. She never left the island? Asked Bruce. Or she was never born, replied Batman. Time is running out, said Paradox, pointing to a monitor, which showed a massive wave of light that was slowly erasing everything in its path, quite literally so. We need to find Kronos, said Neo-Batman after a moment. How? Asked Static. He could be anywhere. I don't suppose you could tell us, Paradox? Ben asked hopefully. Paradox shook his head. The map of the time stream is becoming obsolete. Kronos meddling is interfering with my powers. I can't locate where he is now. All I could do was try to dissuade him, but that endeavor failed. I'm sorry. Batman? Asked Ken. Where are you going? Sometimes the old ways are best. Answered the Dark Knight, as he marched to the door. It won't work, Neo-Batman protested. You don't know your way around here. A lot of things have changed. Batman turned his head. Are criminals still superstitious and cowardly? Bruce nodded. Yep. Good enough for me. Then he walked out. After a short while, Batman stood on the rooftop of a skyscraper, looking out at the city. He knew where his prey was. All he had to do was wait. He turned at the sound of footsteps and saw the stitched-up Joker. You're supposed to be the real Batman, right? He asked. I mean, the first one. I've seen history cubes about you. It's hard to believe somebody as stupid as you ever beat the Joker. Then his hand turned into a buzzsaw. Batman's eyes narrowed. Maybe I'm smarter than I look. The Joker ran at him, saw raised, but he only took a few steps before he was blasted by 2 bolts of electricity. Batman looked up to see the other heroes. It had been Static and Ben, now as Amphibian, who had disabled the cyborg. The non-flyers were standing atop a disc made of green mana, courtesy of Ultiman. Oh, terrific! Groaned the Joker, as the heroes landed on the roof. You've got some information we need, Ghoul. Said Neo-Batman. You won't find me the talkative sort. Ghoul said defiantly, but his leg was snatched up by Batman, and he found himself dangling over the edge of the building. Where's Kronos? Demanded Batman. My arm's getting tired. I can't believe I was ever that green. Bruce grabbed Ghoul by the shirt and threw him halfway across the rooftop. He walked up to the terrified cyborg, his cane raised. This is how you interrogate someone. And we've got 9,453 active Jokers, organized into about 200 smaller groups, continued Ghoul's confession, and I don't know where Kronos is. He contacts us. He spends every night in a different one of those old buildings. He looked up into Bruce's eyes. There's no way of knowing ahead of time where he's gonna be. That's everything I know. I swear. Everything? Asked Bruce. Ghoul looked away. I wet my bed until I was 14. Oh, dude, I did not need to hear that, said Ben. He'd turned back to normal halfway through the interrogation, which was still one of the most terrifying things he'd ever seen. Losing my patience. Growled Bruce, taking out his cane again, but he stopped when Batman put a hand on his shoulder. I can't control my friend here much longer, said Batman, so you'd better give us something we can use. His wife. Ghoul said, desperate to avoid the old man, I know where his wife is. As Batman got the information, Static turned to Green Lantern. Wow, Batman playing good cop. Everything's relative. said Lantern with a shrug. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Neo-Gotham. As they reached the last few blocks away from the pyramid, Ben finally turned to Paradox. He'd been meaning to ask the Time Walker a question for a while now but hadn't quite worked up the courage. "Hey, Professor," he said, "I've got a question. I know it's kind of a bad time, but time is neither good nor bad, Ben, it simply is." Paradox nodded at him to continue. "Well, I was hoping you could tell me, how did I get to this universe?" That. Paradox looked down, a little sheepish. "That is easy, Ben, I brought you here." Batman was impressed by the blank, emotionless look on Ben's face. The rest of the group, minus Bruce, who'd returned to headquarters, paused, curious to see what Ben would do. After a moment, he walked up to Paradox, nodded, then punched him in the face, knocking him to the sidewalk. "Whoa, Dad, easy." Ultiman grabbed Ben by the shoulder, in case he tried to continue his attack. "I suppose that I deserve that," said Paradox, standing up, "but considering that you were about to kill yourself, I had no choice." "Oh, I have no problem with you saving my life," said Ben, his voice gaining more and more anger with each word. "I don't even mind you sending me here, in fact, I like it here. What makes me mad is that you sent me here without even sending a damn note." Ben hardly ever cursed, so it was pretty revealing of how mad he was. "I was lost, confused and surrounded by aliens that wanted to kill me. I know, Ben, and for that, I apologize." Paradox hung his head. "Can you forgive me?" For a moment, Ben only stood there, then he spoke. "You owe me a favor, Paradox, and as long as I promise to not interfere with history, you'll grant it, no matter what it is." It was a demand, not a request. Paradox tapped his chin in thought before nodding in agreement. "All right then," said Ben in a much more cheerful voice, "let's save the multiverse, shall we?" He activated the Ultimatrix and slammed down the dial. Wrath. Security in the pyramid was light, if a little strange. It was guarded by robots, which were covered in fake skin to make them look like muscular, zombie, Egyptian-styled versions of the Joker. They weren't much of a threat and were taken down easily. Wrath broke down the door to Kronos' wife's room, and Green Lantern walked forward. "Enid Clinton," started Jon Stewart, but suddenly he was replaced by a Caucasian man with a mask covering his eyes. He still wore the uniform of a Green Lantern and still had a power ring. "We've got business with your husband." The man looked at everyone else, who was staring at him. Wrath had even turned into Ben, purely out of shock. "What? John?" asked Static. The man took another look around at the others. "Hal Jordan, it was another time shift. I'm up to speed, carry on." As he walked to Enid, Neo-Batman looked down at his feet. "Okay, I'm starting to get a migraine." "We'd better get used to it," said Batman, "because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Any one of us could change, or even cease to exist." "Yeah, this sort of thing is pretty." Ben ceased speaking and was replaced by a young girl with red hair and blue clothes. "Weird." "Oh, great," muttered Ultiman, "my dad just turned into a girl." "Oh, I'm not your dad," said the girl. "I'm Gwen Tennyson, Ben's cousin." She turned to Paradox. "Aren't you supposed to prevent this sort of thing?" Paradox shrugged. "I'm doing my best. Don't worry, unlike Mr. Jordan, you'll only be like this for a few more seconds." Gwen nodded. "Good, because this is really..." She disappeared and was replaced by Ben. "Freaky." He turned to the Time Walker. "Please don't let that happen to me again." "This is why we need to find your husband, ma'am," Hal Jordan said to Enid, who'd watched the display with a mix of amusement, confusion and fear. "We just want to undo the harm he's caused. You have my word, we'll do everything in our power to keep from hurting him." Enid, having recovered, said, "Between you and me, I wouldn't mind one bit if he got roughed up along the way." "Then where is he today?" asked War Hawk. "The Parthenon? The Great Sphinx?" "He just wants people to think he moves around," Enid said derisively, but he always sleeps in the same place. The Colosseum, Neo-Gotham. The heroes arrived at the Colosseum, which had been ripped right out of ancient Rome. It looked brand new. Enid had demanded that she come with them to see her husband get what he deserved. What they found inside when they arrived surprised them. It was the same jail that David had spent 6 months caged up in. Hal Jordan scanned the rickety building with his ring. "No booby traps," he said, before turning back into Jon Stewart, "at least, none that my ring can detect." "Man, make up your mind, would you?" said Static. "Anyway," said Green Lantern, "it's safe to go in." Ben looked at Ultiman, whose hands were shaking. "You okay?" Ultiman took a deep breath, then turned to his father. "How are you not? How can you be so calm?" Ben shrugged. "Because I know we'll win." Then he winked. "After all, we've got 2 Tennysons on our side, we've got nothing to worry about." "How is that supposed to make me feel better?" demanded Ultiman. "How is being a Tennyson supposed to save everything?" Ben shrugged again. "I'll admit, the stakes are a little on the high side." But then his face turned serious. "But the Tennysons saved the day, we've done it before, and we'll do it again. Plus, you've got the blood of the House of L running in your veins." He referred to the Kryptonian family that both Kara and Clark hailed from. "If there's one thing I know about them, it's that they always find a way to beat the odds." He looked his son in the eye. "Now, it's time to live up to your lineage, rise to the occasion, and show the universe what a hero like you can do." Ultiman smiled. "Thanks for the pep talk, Dad." Then he and Ben opened the door to the jail, and the heroes marched in. The jail was exactly as Ben remembered it, considering he'd only been here a few hours ago, at least in his mind. Then Enid took the lead, showing them exactly where Kronos was, in the exact same cell he'd been locked up in. Of all places, Green Lantern wondered aloud, why sleep here? Enid snorted as she walked up to her sleeping husband. Because a loser with a kingdom is still just a loser. Then she yanked off the blanket covering her husband's upper body. Both Ben and Ultiman snickered. Kronos was sucking his thumb in his sleep. Then the time traveler woke up. He looked around at the heroes in shock. "Nice going on the stealth, lady," commented a sarcastic Neo-Batman. Before they could react, Kronos pushed a button on his belt, and a time tunnel opened. From the other side emerged the same group of Jokers as before, minus Chucko, while Kronos pushed another button. "Get the belt," ordered Batman. "Nothing else matters." He dove for Kronos, but the maniac disappeared into another time tunnel. Warhawk flew at the Jokers, but Bonk turned his hand into a hammer and knocked the half-Thanagarian through the roof. Before Bonk could make another move, Ultiman flew forward. "It's hero time," he yelled as he smashed the clown through the walls and outside the jail. Ben activated the Ultimatrix. "That's my line," he shouted as he slammed the dial down. Armadillo. The new alien was almost 10 feet tall and looked like an armadillo, standing on 2 legs and covered in yellow metal. His arms were reminiscent of jackhammers. He charged forward and grabbed the hyena with one arm. The jackhammer-like part activated, and the hyena was sent hurtling through the air. Armadillo jumped into the air, then dove into the ground as if it were water. All the shaking was too much for the poorly built structure, and it began to collapse. "We'll come back right over there," commented Paradox, pointing to a far-off pillar. The jail collapsed, but only on the Jokers. The heroes, plus Enid, emerged from behind the pillar. Static looked around. "How did you do that?" he asked. Paradox smiled. "At the moment, I can't see the big picture, as it were, but I can still see a lot of shortcuts." His smile turned into a frown as he saw the DD twins and Ghoul emerge from the rubble. "I consider myself a gentleman, but I do believe that any kindness given would be wasted on them, wouldn't you agree?" Green Lantern nodded, then flew up to Warhawk. "Feel like taking down the bad guys with your old man?" "Always," said a grinning Warhawk. Static flew off to help Ultiman, who, while taking Bonk by surprise, had been driven to a stalemate by the clown's augmented strength. Neo-Batman was left to face the twins, while Lantern and War-Hawk squared off against Ghoul. Ghoul looked at War-Hawk, then at Green Lantern, then at his saws. "You know what? Forget it, I'm going home." With a slump, Ghoul left. "That was surprisingly anticlimactic," said War-Hawk. "Oh well," said Lantern with a shrug, "we can still take down the twins." The two flew down to help Neo-Batman, saving him before he was ripped apart by their whips. "Hey, Ken," shouted Static, doing his best to hold off Bonk. "Isn't it time you took the kid gloves off?" Ultiman nodded. "It's time to go Ultimate," then slapped the symbol on his gauntlet. On his chest appeared a circular dial with 4 spikes, like the Ultimatrix, but instead of the same symbol, an S-shield appeared. With a grin, Ultiman shot forward, his fist connecting with Bonk's jaw, sending him hurtling into the sky. Armadillo emerged from the ground, just in time to see the impressive display. "What was that?" he asked. "It's my ultimate form," his son explained. "Normally, my Kryptonian powers are at half the strength of what Superman's would be, but they're supplemented by my other powers. When I activate my Ultimatrix, I can suppress my other DNA and allow my Kryptonian powers to go to full. Unfortunately, I can only use my Kryptonian powers, and the effect only lasts for 10 minutes. "Still awesome," said Armadillo. "Of course it is," Ultiman said, "you made it for me." Enid watched the whole battle from in front of the pillar, only turning when she saw Kronos appear near her. "How could you betray me, Enid?" he asked. "Everything I've done for you." "Don't blame this on me," yelled Enid. "I just wanted you to assert yourself, not destroy reality." "Couldn't you just go to couples counseling like normal people?" asked Armadillo as he and the other heroes, who'd finished their fights, approached. They were relatively unharmed, though Green Lantern had suffered a cut on his scalp in the battle with the twins. "Kronos," yelled Batman. "Look at what's around you, look at the sky." Kronos looked up and saw the white light literally erasing the sky. "Pretty," he said, his mind unable to comprehend what he was seeing. "Stay with us, man, we've got a problem here," said Lantern. Kronos' mind regained its lucidity. "Right, you're right, this calls for another approach." He kissed Enid on the cheek, then jumped into another time tunnel. "You'll love me next time." Batman, Lantern, Ben and Paradox, the closest ones to him, jumped in after him, leaving the rest of the heroes to hope for the best. "Show 'em what Tennysons can do, Dad," whispered Ken. Inside the time tunnel, Lantern created a protective bubble around himself and the others, willing themselves to go faster. "Where's he going?" asked Batman. "There's nothing left." "Yes, there is," corrected Paradox, "the beginning of time itself." At the end of the time tunnel, beyond Kronos, Ben could faintly make out a giant hand, a spiral of incomprehensible energy in its palm. "He could reset everything," continued Paradox, "he could make himself into a god. Only if he gets there first," retorted Lantern, and the bubble's speed increased. "Just get me close enough." Ben activated the Ultimatrix and slammed down the dial. Snare-OH. This alien seemed to be wrapped in bandages and had a distinctive Egyptian style to it. "The Green Lanterns have a legend," said John, "no one can see the beginning of time, it's a universal law." "Then let's write him a ticket," said Snarrow. Lantern opened a hole in the bubble, and Snarrow sent a bandage outward that wrapped around Kronos' head and drew him into the bubble. Batman placed the disc into the belt while the bubble began to shake. "The program is uploading," Batman said. "Make it fast," Lantern said, "because I'm having a little trouble with the brakes." They fell towards the hand. The Watchtower Batman, Green Lantern and Ben looked around them with wide eyes. They were back in the cafeteria on the Watchtower, just before this whole mess started. "That all really happened?" asked Green Lantern. "I think so," said Batman. "Looks like we won," said Ben smugly. "I so should have bet Ken some money." But is everything back to normal? Lantern wondered. Then smiles appeared on the three men's faces as Wonder Woman approached. She was okay. That's a nasty cut, John, she said. Lantern's hand went to his scalp, where, sure enough, there was the cut he'd sustained in the fight. You don't remember going on a mission with us today, do you? Asked Batman. I just got here, said Wonder Woman, confused. Batman leaned in close to Lantern and Ben. The timelines corrected itself. We're the only ones who remember what happened. Lantern nodded, then his eyes went wide as he saw Shiera. The Thanagarian raised an eyebrow at his look but decided to say nothing and walk off. That, said Lantern slowly, complicates things. How? Asked Ben. You both care for each other, just let things take their course. Let people like Paradox worry about the timelines, and, hey, where is Paradox? The three looked around but couldn't see the Time Walker. Does he do that often? Asked Batman. Only after leaving with some message or other, said Ben. Then he felt something in his pocket. He reached in to find a note, which read, I've taken care of the details, you can tell her, if you wish. This makes us even. Paradox. Ben rolled his eyes. What is it? Asked Lantern. Oh, nothing, said Ben, pocketing the message, just Paradox getting the last word in. Still, Ben was a little intrigued. Paradox probably meant that he could tell Kara about Ken, but that man never did anything without a reason. Still, he had good intentions. He made his decision. By the way, said Lantern, what happened to Kronos? I put him into an infinite time loop. He'll never be able to escape. I'm gonna go home, guys, see you later. Ben stood up, not paying attention to the conversation anymore, and made to leave, but not before turning to Wonder Woman. Good to have you back, Diana. As he left, Wonder Woman turned to Batman. You are going to tell me what's going on. Batman looked uneasy, while Lantern made a whipping motion with his hand. WHKSSSSH. Bellwood, Professor, asked a concerned Shifter, are you okay? Paradox smiled. Of course, my dear, in fact, things are definitely looking up. The Time Walker left, not addressing the curious looks from the plumbers. San Francisco. Ben paced his living room. He hadn't been this nervous since the first date he'd had with Kara. He'd called her earlier and asked her to come over but hadn't said why he needed to talk to her, only that it was important. Finally, he heard a knock on the door. He opened it up and let Kara inside. Ben? What was so important? Is everything okay? Instead of replying, Ben gave her a long kiss, then led her to the couch. He took a deep breath. Kara, I'm going to tell you what happened today, and I don't want you to freak out, okay? Ben then proceeded to tell her everything that had happened, the Old West, Tobias Manning, the future, the new league, and about Ken. Through it all, Kara remained silent, though at the mention of a son, she gasped. Finally, at the end of the story, Ben took her hands in his. Kara? You okay? Kara slowly shook her head. You met our son. Yours and mine. Ben nodded. Yeah, he was about 30-something. He seemed like a good guy. He had your hair. And he had powers from both of us? Some Kryptonian powers, though not as powerful as yours, and he got some additions from me. Kara looked Ben in the eye. Why are you telling me this? Ben thought about it. He hadn't known why, it just seemed natural. Because I love you, Kara. Isn't sharing important things what people who love each other do? Kara finally shook off her shock, then smiled at Ben. She snuggled in close and wrapped her arms around him. For a long time, they just sat there. Ben? Yeah. I've made a decision. About what? Kara took a deep breath. I want to move in with you. Ben looked at her in shock. Kara, if this is about Ken. She shook her head. No, it isn't. If there's a child in our future, then fine. For now, though, I want to move in with you because I love you. I can't see anyone else in my life but you. Ben smiled and hugged her tightly. And I feel the same way.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.